Go live. Hey, YouTuberverse. How's it going? It's Jeff here with Metal Madness 66 channel, and we're going to do another edition of Gas Masks and Hand Grenades here. And tonight, I got a special panel that we put together. Well, Matt kind of helped too, because this was actually Matt's suggestion. We've got from the Dark Path, we've got Matt down here. And we've got Devin over, it's probably that way, I'm guessing, yeah. Devin over here from Maze of Torment. And that way we've got Marty Worm from the Marty Worm channel.
Hello.
And so we're going to dive into the catalog of Canadian thrash punk, cyber metal, prog band, Voivod. And this is one Marty and I talked about doing a couple months ago. And then Matt and I happened to be chatting on Instagram the other day, and we were talking about how, well, actually, he brought up the fact that he was planning to do one of these. I said, man, we're going to be stepping on each other's toes sometimes with these deep dives because we're all going to want to do certain bands that we love to do. And Matt's like, well, hey, you want to collab on it? I'm like, cool. Let me see if Marty wants to jump in. And then we decided to have our paper boy up there join us tonight, too. So it's like, fuck you. Anyway, so glad to have you guys on board.
He can just stay on mute. He's not going to have anything relevant to say. He's only He's only been listening to Voivod for like a year. So
I know. Well, that's the funny thing. I was going to let him start with let's go there now. We generally what I'd like to do with these is find out where you came in on the band, how you learned about the band, what your entry point was for the band, and so we'll kind of go around the ring here. And Devin, we'll start in ascending order of age. We'll start with Devin first, being the 13-year-old prodigy that he is. Devin, take it away, my friend.
How I found out about Voivod?
Yeah.
So you know Amoeba Records, right?
Yep.
I do.
Have you seen this series, like What's in My Bag?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was watching one with, I think it was 3 Inches of Blood, and one of the guys showed a Voivod record.
Okay.
I think it was, which one was it? I believe it was this one.
Cool.
So I think this was the first one I ever checked out because of that, though that was like, that was like a couple years ago, but it wasn't until recently I actually checked out other albums besides that, because I've heard they, like, a lot of the records kind of sound different from each other, so that was maybe why took me a while to listen to the rest of the stuff, so.
So you bought it because you like the artwork or because the 3 Inches of Blood guy said get it?
The artwork, I'm not really a fan of that band, so I'm not sure why I was watching that, but.
I watch a lot of stuff on that Amoeba, What's in My Bag, because they're fun.
Yeah,
I don't care what the artist is typically. They're cool to watch.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, they're fun. All right, cool. I thought you were going to say because Matt told you should listen to him.
Okay, a little bit of that too, maybe, but.
yeah, I was gonna call him out and say, you better say that I'm the one that told you to start listening to Voivod, you little shit, because you never would have listened to him without me. So, be honest. Come on, be honest.
Yeah, man. Honesty's the best policy, sir. All right. The next youngest cat, which would be you, my friend, Matt.
Oh, the bald opinionated one. Okay.
Yes.
I've actually only, I'm kind of, in the grand scheme of things, new to Voivod in a way. I've really only been a fan of theirs for about 6 years, I'm gonna say.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, I mean, they were always a band I was aware of and had heard about, but there's just so many bands, you can't listen to everything.
Of course.
And one day I was in my friend's car. We were driving to some concert in downtown Atlanta back when I lived in Atlanta, and really, I didn't know what we were listening to, but I really dug it. And I was like, hey, what is this? And he just looked at me like I was an idiot. And he was like, dude, this is Voivod. And I was like, this is Voivod? Sick. And, and then it just kind of went from there. It was either, I can't remember if it was Killing Technology or if it was Kators, however you pronounce it.
Okay.
It was one of those two albums. That was the first one I heard. But the first one that really connected with me was Killing Technology. So I listened to Killing Technology all the time. That was like my go-to Voivod album for a good while. But from there, I just, started listening to everything, and I pretty much love their entire discography with the exception of like 2 or 3 albums. And we'll get into that into part 2 of the Voivod deep dive here. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it. I can thank a good friend of mine for showing me the way, the correct way.
Absolutely. That's
So
a good
that's how it
friend
happened for me.
indeed. I just want to highlight Blinded Inside's stunning comment here. He is getting high and playing with his balls. That, my friend, is living large on a Saturday night right there. Just want to let people know, too, I don't know how diligent I'm going to be on comments because I'm using a phone and it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I'll do what I can when I can. But if you have specific questions or whatever, we'll try to address that. But I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time messing with comments. So please just, excuse me for that. Mr. Marty, sir.
Hi.
Yo.
I guess for me, Voivod, I'm trying to think. War and Pain came out in 84, so I probably, my first experience with them was probably, I think Roar was my first purchase by them. So that was 86. And that was basically alone, back in the day, there was no internet. We've talked about this a million times. So, you found a band that you liked, you look, oh, it's on Metal Blade Records. So I would go through and buy everything on Metal Blade that I could find at the tape store. And me and my friend Scott would always go together. He had the car. So he'd start in the A's, I'd start in the V's, and we'd meet in the middle. And of course, you see the album cover to Roar, and you're like, holy shit, this is killer. And then they had War and Pain there. I didn't know which one to buy. I bought Roar. And, first initial experience with that album in particular, I mean, we'll get there, but that's a very aggressive, unrelenting album. So
Yeah, it is.
It kind of in one ear out the other type of thing. I was, young into this stuff, and I typically hated everything first and then ended up listening to it enough where I ended up liking it. I mean, I hated everything. I hated Metallica. I hated Merciful Fate. What the fuck's up with those vocals? Oh, it's so fast. I was a Kiss guy, and I was a Dio and Sabbath and Ozzy guy. And I was even dabbled in some of the 80s shit, and it wasn't really until this Best of Metal Blade Volume 1. It's got Blower, Voivod's Blower on here, and that song, I loved it. It clicked with me finally, so made me return to my Roar album and then run back and get War and Pain, and from there it just, anything that came out or popped up in the store, I had to get it. And they're just one of those bands that they've always challenged themselves, they've always reinvented themselves, but never lost hold of their template. They've always maintained their true spirit. It's always in their music, no matter, if they're thrash or if they're, more hardcore leaning, or if they're, into the prog stuff. It's you can listen to a song about 30 seconds in, it's Voivod just by the music alone. It doesn't even have to have the vocals. You can tell it's Voivod. So yeah, I mean, we're going to dive into all this stuff here, but that, it's not a super exciting story, but that's, Camelot music. Bought it because it was on a Metal Blade, and yeah, that's it.
No, I mean, that's the whole point of getting the stories behind is to get a feel for, where you came in, why you came in, why you stuck with them. I mean, all of us, with the exception of Devin, no offense, Devin, but you're a newbie to it, and even Matt, you just admitted you're kind of too. Marty and I've got a lot of experience with this band for a lot of years. For me, how it started was I saw the video of Astronomy Domine on MTV in 1989. And I'm like, whoa. And I hate to even admit this, but at that point in time, I'm 23, 24 years old. I did not know that Astronomy Domine was a Pink Floyd song, because I knew, Dark Side of the Moon. I knew Animals. I knew that mid period of Floyd, but I didn't really know that old psychedelic Floyd, the Syd Barrett stuff. Yeah, I didn't get into that till later. So I had no idea that. I thought that was just a metal band with a really kick-ass, cool, song, and it is their cover's great,
dude.
It's super fucking
It's
cool.
amazing listening to the original Pink Floyd song. It's amazing the genius of Voivod, how they interpreted it and made it their own. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing.
I mean, they didn't change it dramatically, but what Piggy did with his guitar, the delays, the echoes, the reverbs, the way the way that Snake sang the song, it was just fucking super cool. And I could not get that song out of my head, and I went out and found they had pretty good distribution by then with MCA and Mechanic, and I found it. I put it in my car, and I was like, my car started. I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is so weird. Like, as I'm driving, I'm like, this is too fucking weird. I couldn't take it out though. I kept listening and listening and listening, and before long, that CD was in my CD player for like 2 months straight. And then, and Marty, you and I have this in common, they show up at a little club in Lancaster, PA, which is where I live, headlining a triple bill of Soundgarden and a band, Faith No More, that I didn't even know who they were at the time because they hadn't dropped Epic yet and all that stuff. They hadn't blown up at MTV. And I got to go to that show and meet Snake, and it was just, and meet, like I met Piggy, but I didn't meet him. I didn't really talk to him. I, saw him walking around the club, and it was like, whoa. So that's where I started, and I started to go backwards. Then I immediately ran out and found a copy of Dimension Hatröss, and I found Killing Technology, and I fucking love those albums. And then I hit Roar and the first two, and that's a different story, which we'll get into here in a few moments. So
they really had no business being on that bill. That was such a bizarre bill. It was
weird.
And then put Soundgarden in front of them, who were the hot band of the time. And
Soundgarden was the band of those three that was mostly known in the States because of Hands All Over and, with Loud Love, that album was kind of blowing up. And, it was a killer show. All three bands were fantastic.
Yeah.
If I had to say which band was the alpha, though, it was definitely Soundgarden. They just were
easily.
So incredible. And Cornell was a fucking force of nature, man. I mean, he was just other fucking worldly. However, I'll talk a little bit more about that show when we get to Nothingface. So, talk a little bit a very quick little history, because you guys can all, how I do this. You can all go hit your, Wikipedia links and all that stuff. But basically, the band was formed in 1982. The two main guys that formed it initially were Blackie and Piggy. And I didn't look their names up. Dennis DeMoore is Piggy, right?
Yep.
Blackie is Theriault.
I believe so.
John Theriault, I think.
Yeah.
Denny Belanger is Snake, the singer, and Michel Langevin is Away, the drummer.
Yep.
They're anyways formed in 1982 in Jonquière, Quebec, which was a little surprising to me because I thought they were from Montreal. In fact, they're about 200 miles northwest of Montreal, actually. They played their first live show June 25th, 1983, which they recorded and released this as a demo, which is called Anachronism. I did not check that out. I've never checked it out. I've
never heard it either. Nope.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of like crappy demos. So
I've got the Two to Death demo, which came out in 84. I have a dub of it, actually. Yeah.
84. Yeah, that came out in 84. Anachronism has some originals, most of which ended up on War and Pain. Also has some Priest covers, some Venom covers, Motorhead covers,
Merciful Fate,
and even some Raven covers. Yeah. Like you said, second demo was called To the Death, 1984, and that was released in January of 84. And Brian Slagle came into possession of a copy of this and contacted the band and signed them to a recording contract. And they then went in and recorded their first album, War and Pain. They borrowed $2,000 Canadian from Snake's mother. That sounds crazy when you hear that. $2,000 is all it took for them to record an album. But, I don't know if there was other money behind. Oh, cool. That's the To the Death one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How is that overall?
Rough production, but it's okay.
Rough.
I mean, it's a lot of covers. There's Merciful Fate and Venom covers on here. I dubbed this off a friend that actually had the real demo. So I copied the cover and shit. It's just a dub, but yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I didn't dig into the demo stuff. I usually don't talk about them in these, but and let's see. I think that's pretty much it. Matt, did you want to add anything for history?
Nope. You got it.
You good? Marty, you got anything you want to throw in there?
Nope.
Nope. Cool. Okie doke. Let's. Who wants to? I'll tell you what we'll do. Matt, we'll start with you. And if you would you please show the first album? I'll give a little bit of quick history behind it fast while you're showing it. War and Pain, which came out on Metal Blade, August 10th, 1984. Was released on Roadrunner in Europe, excuse me, and Bonsai in Canada. Voivod and Slagle produced it, which is interesting because Slagle isn't really a producer, but he was backing it with money. So, and again, like I said, they borrowed $2,000 Canadian from Snake's mom to help record this. And according to the guys in the band, within 2 years, this album had sold 40,000 copies, which I find kind of hard to believe. But
Wow.
40,000 copies, and the band only received $1,000 payment in total for this album.
Wow.
So that's pretty crazy. So, Matt, what do you want to tell us about this album?
To me, my history with this album is I don't know if it's the same as most people, but to me, when people talk about war metal, to me, war metal should be what this album sounds like, not what war metal is known for out there. Just everything about this record is just pure insanity and chaos. It sounds like a tank running you over. It sounds like you getting blown the fuck up. You know, this is war metal to me. So when people talk about revenge and blasphemy and crap like that, like, shut the hell up. Just give me some War and Pain and I'm good when it comes to war metal, because this is what it's all about right here.
Any specific tracks stand out for you? On
Yeah,
that
I mean, Warriors of Ice is, you know, probably my favorite on this album, but really the whole album, it all kind of runs together for me as just such a force of nature. It just kind of, the whole thing just plays well together. So hard for me to pick a favorite song, but you know, Warriors of Ice, we'll go with that one. So
you're pretty favorable on that album. You enjoy it pretty good.
I do. I mean, it's not my favorite Voivod. You know, we'll talk about that later. But honestly, War and Pain and Roar go so well together. You know, they kind of became a different band after the first two records. Absolutely. And there's just something really primitive about War and Pain that, you know, it changes up a little bit on Roar, but War and Pain, it's just chaos. It's just audio chaos, and I love it for that. So
cool.
That's really all I can say about War and Pain. But.
Marty, how about you go next?
Okay. One thing that should be noted about Voivod is, especially in these early years in particular, is the art of Away is the biggest marketing stroke of genius. There's not a lot of album covers out there in the world. I mean, there are, but this album sounds like the cover looks. I mean, that is almost a perfect depiction of what you're going to hear on this album. And not only was it the album artwork, their live shows, they were all decked out in the spikes. They had the gas masks. They had the portable fog machines. They'd come out on stage, fogging the crowd down. And, you know, they Piggy and Blackie, they had these customized instruments that were, you know, I think Piggy had an Explorer shape and a V shape that were, you know, unique cut. They look like pieces of art. And Blackie's bass, he is credited as blower bass, which is a perfect description for his bass tone. It's just heavily distorted bass. And he played this augmented looking customized black bass it looked like a piece of art and because the way the body was built, the neck looked like it was super long. It looked like he was playing a fucking weapon of destruction. He really did.
It had that really fucking angular, intense headstock on it too, if I recall.
And you know, the guys are all decked out in the spikes and the garb, and they did it in a very artistic way. it never struck me as cheesy or, you know, it was over the top, but it was in an artistic way. You could tell they had their shit together when they were going out there doing it, which is really cool and amazing, because like this demo here, I mean, it's full of covers. It's got Merciful Fate covers. It's got Venom covers, a Raven cover. I mean, there's a ton of covers on this demo. And the fact that the band found themselves, I mean, this is still kind of a sloppy take on what they would become, but there's songs here, and it's really cool how they mixed. There's like a definite hardcore punk vibe kind of swimming beneath the surface of this stuff. But I mean, for me, Blower is an amazing song. Nuclear War is a great fucking song. Good way to end the album. War and Pain, awesome song. Of course, Suck Your Bone. That highlights that English wasn't their first language of choice.
Yeah.
Obviously. So, I mean, the lyrics were a little hit or miss there, but, and then the album starts off with Voivod, which is essentially their Iron Maiden song. You know, they got to have a song with your name in it, but it sets the tone perfectly. And, I may have initially been a little befuddled when I heard this, because you know, it took me a minute to wrap my head around it. But when it clicked, I mean, it's special. I mean, they started off with their own sound. They sound like nobody else. That's one nice thing about the old days of heavy metal, is there was a lot of bands that jumped in that had their own sound. You don't see that as much these days. There are so many people all using the same gear. All using top of the line gear. They're all tuned into the same tuning, especially in modern death metal, modern old school death metal. They're all tuning to A or B, and you know, they're worried about a sound more than riffs. And it just, a lot of bands sound the same today. But back then, Voivod is a prime example. They were the perfect combination of art and metal and punk. And I think it stood the test of time, and they're still churning out amazing albums in their early on predetermined sound. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's
Marty, is your copy the Metal Blade Enigma press?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same.
And it says also on cassette, so these came out before CDs.
Yeah.
Nice. Devin, do you have any thoughts on this album?
Yeah, I do. I find with a lot of debut albums, it's bands like paying tribute to their idols, especially on this one. To me, it sounds like a mixture of Motorhead mixed with Discharge. So it's kind of thrash, but I would say more on the like kind of punk leaning.
There's some, that's in there for sure.
I mean, this is good, but honestly, if they stuck this and the next record are a good pairing, like Matt said, but I definitely prefer the next record. I think it's more original. And honestly, if they stuck with this style, I think they would have got lost in the shuffle around a bunch of all the other thrash bands coming out at the time, because definitely a couple albums later, I think, is when they define their sound. Here, these still sound kind of original, but still like less original than what they would sound later. But there's still a bunch of songs in here that they still play live to this day, so it's definitely a good thing, I guess. So yeah.
Well, Voivod they always play. I mean, that's almost always. I don't know
like their Iron Maiden, you said.
Yeah,
right. I don't know about
they always play Astronomy Domini too. Every time I've seen them, they've played that.
Really, I haven't actually. Other than Nothingface, I don't think I've ever seen them play it. That's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, I'll admit that, frankly, I don't recall listening to this album back in the day, because, as I said, I came in at Nothingface and went backwards. And when I got to Roar, I kind of stopped. I just was like, ugh, really? Like, it just didn't click with me, because I'm not a punk guy. Oh, by the way, I'm going to get rid of that there for a second. Nikki, I already gave you a shout out for the Killing Technology, thing that you sent for me. So, and yeah, we might talk a little bit about Voivod, just saying. Anyway, for me, if I would have learned of this band, and I did know about this band before Nothingface, because I religiously bought Kerrang in the late 80s, the mid to late 80s. I was buying Kerrangs from about 83 onward. Every month I went trucked down to my, local record store, mom and pop brick and mortar place, and I would buy a couple CDs or a couple of LPs. Back then it was probably LPs, and almost every single time I'd get an edition or two of Kerrang. So I had seen reviews of these albums before 89 when I got Nothingface. So I knew the name, but I didn't know what they sounded like. But if I would have come into the band on this album or Roar, it's pretty unlikely that I would have stuck with them and gone forward with them. So I kind of am glad I came in when I did, because I could appreciate things in a reverse order in a way. To me, this isn't, it's a combination of speed and thrash. Has less of the what's to come Voivod OG sound than I think than the next album does. You do get some dissonant, jagged, angular guitar, which is there, and the atonal guitar. Piggy plays a little more traditionally straight on this album than he does the next few albums, clearly, because I definitely hear Motorhead here. I definitely hear Venom here. They're Raven. I hear that as well. Snake's atonal nasal tone. It's not in the mix as high as it ends up being in Roar. So it's kind of like, again, if I had heard his voice back then on this album, I probably would have been like, this just isn't for me. And being a guy that was not into punk from that era, that the chanted vocals and things like that, the shouted vocals never really appealed to me much. So I probably wouldn't have been really into this. The production on this is actually pretty solid. I was kind of surprised listening to it how good the production is. The guitars sound big and bold. The bass is super prominent. Marty mentioned the blower bass, and Blackie has a very distinct tone. It's really fat and kind of in your face and prominent. And Blackie's a real good bass player. If you ever really listen to the bass lines in Voivod, you can't help but be impressed by it. I really like the song Voivod. I like Warriors of Ice. Although, again, I think the first 4 tracks on this album sound very much like Venom and Motorhead. And like Suck Your Bone has like even bluesy guitar in it, which you don't rarely hear Blackie play blues guitar going forward after this. The one really standout track, Blower's pretty cool too. That's probably the most punkiest song for me. But Live for Violence is really, really cool. I really like the chords changes and the riff changes in that song. Even has a little bit of a new wave of British heavy metal Priest kind of vibe to that song. And the other one that really stands out for me on this one, Black City's really, really cool. That one sounds like the Voivod that they become. And Nuclear War is really, really cool. Nuclear War actually sounds like Black Sabbath when it starts. It's got that drony, almost doomy sound when it gets going. And it's got a lot of really, really cool guitar interplay and things that are going on. The way that Piggy starts to structure his guitar parts is truly impressive as we start moving up through these albums. But on that song, I really hear like the beginning of that crazy interplay of guitar stuff that Piggy's just wholly unique. And he becomes even more unique as we move up probably to like the 3rd album. So it's a good album. I don't love it. I mean,
you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I hit the wrong button here. This and one other album would probably be the bottom of my list as far as their entirety of their catalog. But I was kind of surprised by how much I did enjoy it when I kind of expected to not like it at all. So,
it's pretty front heavy though. Like all the best songs are at the front.
See, I kind of like the second half of it because it sounds a little more Voivodian and less Motorhead in the beginning. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
I don't know. I like the whole thing, to be honest. Yeah, the Suck Your Bone, the bluesy stuff at the front. That's a good point to make because he does kind of revisit. There's some more bluesy stuff that comes out later albums after he was gone, sick. He recorded a bunch of stuff sick. There's some bluesy stuff on those albums too.
But he was rarely a blues player. I mean, you rarely ever heard a blues riff out of Piggy, and you could really pick up on it there. And it was like, I was like, oh, that sounds like Filthy Phil or not Filthy Phil. What's his name from Fast Eddie or fucking Wurzel or something like that. It just has that era of Motorhead sound to it. So
that's probably where he got the influence from, for sure.
I'm sure. Matt, how about we jump on to the next album, which is Roar, which came out March 14th, 1986. And they were now no longer with Metal Blade. They jumped to Noise Records, the German label. Bonsai in Canada again, and what, I can't read my writing here. Combat for Europe, correct? Is that right? Yeah, I can't read my writing now.
I've got the Combat Noise press, so I thought Combat was the U.S. pressing, and then Noise was Europe.
Cool. You can show that, and then when I pull you up, then Marty. Let's see. Was there any notes on this one? Well, go ahead, Matt.
All right. So one of the things unrelated to the music, but one of the anecdotes that really stick out in my brain regarding Rrröööaaarrr from that Worlds Away book, which someone will show at some point, I'm sure. One of the rumors about this record for the longest time was that Away painted this on a pizza box. And, you know, when you look at it, it definitely is muted and it looks like it was painted on cardboard. And I'm pretty sure he says in that book that, you know, that's close, but not 100% accurate. Yes, it was painted on cardboard, but not on a cardboard pizza box, just a cardboard box. And the black trim around it is black electrical tape. So talk about DIY, like punk rock aesthetic galore.
No money for a canvas, so he used a cardboard box. That's amazing.
Yeah, so, you know, there you go. I mean, that really kind of sums up this record in a nutshell in a way. I mean, you know, the writing on this album is stepped up a notch. I don't really hear the Venom isms and the Motorhead isms on this one nearly as much.
Mm-hmm.
This one, to me, is where Voivod really starts to sound more like themselves. And to me, I really hear just the oddities of the way Piggy wrote music much more on this one than you do on the first record. You know, Piggy is known for being a self-taught guitarist and not really always playing in time or in tune. He kind of does his own thing. And a lot of that starts to really show on Rrröööaaarrr, but it still has that same chaos feel, that same war metal feeling that War and Pain had. And I personally like this record a lot better than War and Pain. Out of the two, I'd say this one's my favorite, but I still would say Rrröööaaarrr and War and Pain go together like brother-sister albums. I mean, you kind of have to, I mean, they go hand in hand. Like I said, they kind of became a different band after this. Their prowess just kind of raised the bar again beyond this one. But this one, it's still thrashy, it's still punky, it's still everything that is great about War and Pain. It's just tweaked a notch. And I don't know, just the way Piggy plays, it just sounds so strange and weird. And you can really, really hear that a lot more on this one, I think. So that is my thoughts on
any tracks there jump out at you? Anything really?
Yeah,
super
I mean,
cool?
Again, this is another one where I like to just listen to the entire record and listen to it. I mean, Korgel, the Exterminator is great. Fuck Off and Die, To the Death. I mean, Thrashing Rage is probably one of my favorites too. But yeah, I mean, the whole record is great. So there you go.
Awesome.
And this is, if you've never noticed on the art, if you want to put it back up there again. You know, you got the Voivod skull right there, and it says "To the Death" right there.
To the death.
So
yeah, that's great. That's great artwork. He upped the game even over the first one. The first one was killer, but that one now we're not going to get into it here because it's pretty deep and it could get pretty, long-winded. But Matt, I don't know if you remember this in the Worlds Away book. Away talks about the narrative for at least the first 5 albums. There's essentially sort of a story with the Voivod.
It's the story of the Voivod, a cosmic vampire, a war-torn vampire that comes from a war-torn world. That's what you see on War and Pain. That's the start of his journey. You see him in Rrröööaaarrr kind of taking over that planet. That's why the Voivod has become a tank on that one. Killing Technology is where the Voivod goes interstellar and searches out other worlds to destroy. Dimension Hatröss is where he goes. I think the story behind Dimension Hatröss is that he kind of went into
Creates
the
a new
multiverse
dimension.
or something like that, like an interdimensional kind of a thing.
Well, he uses the particle accelerator to create
Yeah.
a new dimension, and then when he gets there, he realizes that everyone is just a drone, and he wants to destroy them. Although it
Right.
should be noted that the Voivod is both a good and bad character. He's
Yeah.
good because he wants to rid the galaxies and cosmos of nuclear war. However, he tends to destroy a lot of shit.
Yeah,
too.
he's a
So
warmonger. He
yeah.
leaves destruction in his wake, and that's why when you get to Nothingface, I was going to wait to talk about this when we got to Nothingface, but
Yeah.
we're already on the topic. Screw it. So when you get to Nothingface, that's kind of where the Voivod has kind of given up in a way. Like
Yep.
he sees that everywhere he goes, he just brings destruction to wherever he's at. So he disappears inside of himself and sees that there's all these different personalities that live within the Voivod, and that's why he's the Nothingface, because he
Right.
no longer exists. He's disappeared into himself, and he's pretty much, eliminated himself as an entity. And that really makes sense with that record too, because that's really where they went full prog on that record.
Right.
That album is
Right.
a prog masterpiece.
Yep.
So, it really makes sense. And I don't think a lot of people really know that was the theme going through these records, or at least through the album covers. I never put that together until I read that book.
No, and
that's just what was in Away's brain while he was making the artwork and helping
Right.
write the music, and it just really comes through. So it really goes to what Marty had said earlier, where they were really a band where the music and the art come together and gave you something special.
it was a marriage of excellence, so to speak, because and the other thing to mention is too that Away was trying to become an illustrator or artist for the Canadian heavy metal magazine, and that he was putting this Voivod narrative together and then illustrating it in hopes that he might get a job working with the magazine doing that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the Canadian. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like the Canadian version of Heavy Metal, the Heavy Metal magazine.
I can't remember the name of it either. But part 6 then was also on Phobos, which which is later, and actually the only 2 parts that were fully realized and fully narrated, in other words, where he wrote the story down, was Dimension, Hatröss, and Phobos. And
Right.
part 7 was going to be that album that never came out, which we can talk about next time. So, I didn't know if we want to get into that. You summarize it real quickly and real well there. So,
well, those who would like to hear me talk about that in even more detail, I did do a full review of The World's Away,
correct.
The Art of Away Langevin, however you pronounce his name, a while back. So,
yep.
If you
go check
to
that
my
out.
channel and look at my old videos, you will see a picture of me holding the book like this, and you can watch it and enjoy yourself.
Marty, what you got on Roar, sir?
Well, just before Roar, they put out this 4-song picture disc EP known as I've heard people call it the Thrashing Rage picture disc. I've heard people call it the Hell Driver picture disc, but it's got Thrashing Rage, Slaughter in the Grave, Hell Driver, and To the Death. So this came out just slightly before Roar did. Again, you see the guys all decked out with their fucking custom
battle gear,
and but Roar, to me, they took what happened on War and Pain and they refined it. They got tighter and they got a lot faster. This album from start to finish is pretty much an ass kicker. It's really fast. This is where Piggy really starts to throw himself into these disjointed and bizarre chords. I want to say chords. I think a lot of it was tuning, but I don't know for sure. But there's a lot of things happening on here that just sound very disjointed and discordant. And Away holds it all together perfectly. He is not a super amazingly flashy drummer, but man, there's probably not a more solid drummer out there. I mean, he is just a great
dude. He's real fucking good.
He's really
real
tight.
Fucking good.
And I think I heard something on later albums. He would go in and like crush drum tracks in one take. I mean, I don't know, but again, the art is a perfect marriage with the music on here. You look at this and a tank firing off its missiles or whatever. It's perfect. And for me, this album, Thrashing Rage, Build Your Weapons, Ripping Headaches is a great fucking song. Korgel, it starts off really great, really aggressive. Again, this is just kind of showing a band getting their shit together. I think they finally kind of decided on, okay, this is the direction we're going in. They kind of, there's still some punk in here, but they've shed it a little bit. They've embraced more of the thrash movement that's going on in the world, especially in Europe. This is not a very American sounding thrash album or a Canadian sounding thrash album. This sounds very European to me for some reason. I don't know. That could be just a weird thing I'm coming up with, but it sounds like a band that belonged on Noise to me. And they really, as they went, they refined themselves so much more as they progressed from here. But I don't listen to this album as much as I used to. We'll go to my go-to album. There's some shit that's coming up that's like some of the best music ever made. It's so good. But yeah, I mean, Roar is an amazing album. I listened to it a shit ton. Initially, this is the first album I bought by them. It didn't click with me. It took a while for it to absorb and wrap my head around. But when I did, it's classic album for sure. That's it.
Cool. Devin, what do you got on this?
Yeah, I agree with all you guys said. This is basically like One Pain Part 2, but more refined, I say. And honestly, a lot of the punk leanings are kind of out the window. This definitely has more in common with the Canadian counterparts like Sacrifice and Razor than, say, the Motorhead or Discharge sound of the early records. But I guess you could say this is the closest they got to being pure thrash, because after this, they got a lot weirder, though they're still, like, some of the thrash parts after this kind of poke their head in, but they definitely got more progressive on the radio stuff. But
oh yeah,
still some of the best songs on here, like Fuck Off and Die, Slaughter in the Grave, Thrashing Rage, Build Your Weapons to the Death. Probably hard to pick, like, well, definitely one of my favorites of their discography, but if you want the more progressive side, that'll be later, but definitely one of the best of the thrash era, which I consider the thrash era their first three, but probably definitely one of the best.
Cool. For me, I was actually really surprised by this album. I picked up the when in anticipation of doing this at some point. Marty and I were talking about this a couple weeks back. I think we started talking about it right around New Year's Eve. I think we started kicking the idea around, but I've had a lot going on and we just weren't getting to it. And I said, well, I got to get a few more things. And the first thing I ran and grabbed was this, because as I said, Nikki Goods gave me the Killing Technology version of that. And this is the Roar original album. I think these are 20th anniversary deluxe editions. I think it's the 3 Noise ones that were put out by BMG Sanctuary. And this has Roar original album on it. It's got the Spectrum 86 No Speed Limit Weekend live in Montreal, October 86. And then it has on the DVD, it's got, some mixed demos, rough mixed demos, the Anachronism Live, that first June 25th show, 83 show. So I actually do have Anachronism. I just haven't listened to it yet because it's on here. Some early rehearsals, Piggy Sound Collage. And then there's a bunch of video, like their first live show in the U.S. on May 5th, 86. So these, if you can find them, and they're getting tough to find out there. There were a couple on Amazon when I grabbed this one, and I went back to get them, Dimension Hatröss, a couple days ago, and they were gone. But then I did find a link to one, and I grabbed one. So Dimension Hatröss is coming. Again, Nikki, thanks for giving me Killing Technology. For me, this is their thrashiest album for me.
Yeah.
And it's good. I do think their production is not that great. The production is very bright, and there's a lot of the drums sort of feel like they're kind of overwhelming the mix a lot of the time. And then you've got, in fact, on this album, I kind of think Piggy's guitar is a little understated, whereas in War and Pain, I thought it was the other way around. But it's a cool album. I like it. I would say it's probably not going to be in my top 4 or 5 to listen to all the time, but I was really surprised by it. I kind of was like, oh, this is not how I remember it when I listened to it back in 90, 91 when I was going backwards from Nothingface. I don't really hear the punk influence on this one like I did on the first one. not as much anyways, but you know, the drumming, there's a much more frenetic pace to this album than the first one, and certainly even Killing Technology, which we're going to talk about next, which is kind of the beginning of the marriage of the prog and the techie thrash. This one's just kind of all out balls to the wall speed thrash metal, and it's good stuff. I just don't love the mix on it. That's the production's a little rough for me. Let's see, Korgol the Exterminator, great thrasher with great Voivod rips. As all of you guys said, this is where Piggy starts to inject that strange atonal dissonant style that he has. And Marty, you were saying that you thought it was tuning. From my understanding of it, a lot of what Piggy does is he plays a lot of triads, but he would do a lot of weird stretches. If you watch any video of him, he plays strange stretches. And I'm sure that I've never really read anything specifically that said he was doing anything in different tunings, but it wouldn't shock me if he was. But he played a lot of stuff on the higher up on the neck than down in your low chords.
Right.
He played a lot of these slashing, jagged, angular triads that sounded almost like skin ripping. They were just kind of like jabbing at you when they would come at you, and
or like a air raid siren is what some of it sounds like to me. It's really
yeah. And I mean, very unique style of playing, very different style of playing, and it was also the way he used his rhythms too. He was not a standard metal chugger. He not usually, anyways. He came up with angular, strange ways to put sounds together that, frankly, shouldn't work. They just shouldn't work, but they did for some strange reason with this band. Okay, gotta be mentioned here, man. Slaughter in a Grave. Are you guys familiar with that tune?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that song is, right? That is fucking Live Wire Part 2, baby.
Don't ruin this for me, Jeff. Don't ruin
the beginning of that song is fucking Live Wire, man.
Fuck you, Jeff.
It's fucking Live Wire, I'm telling you, man.
Fuck you, Jeff.
Let's see what else. Horror is very thrashy, and that one has the most punk vibe to it because Snake is strangled vocals on that. He's just like out of his fucking mind on that one. Love it. Thrashing Rage is great. And that said about Slaughter in a Grave, I love it. It's a great tune. It's probably my favorite song on the album. And Hell Driver's fucking killer track right there. To the Death is really good. I mean, they're all good and they're all very unique, but they don't really sound like this again after this album. And
no,
we can kind of move on from there because they go to the next album, which Matt is going to show us here. And that is Killing Technology, again on Noise Records, issued on April 2nd, 1987. And it should be noted here real quick that there's a pretty good story out there, and I believe it comes from Michel himself, that the reason that Voivod got the Noise contract, you guys know this story?
No.
Was that Martin Eric Ain got a copy of the demos for Roar and got them to, what's the guy that runs, you know it, Matt, what's his name? Noise?
Carl Walterbach.
Right. He got a hold of the demos and he offered this 3-album deal to the guys, and they jumped on it because Metal Blade didn't chase him down for another deal.
Well, Carl
right away,
Carl gave them a slightly better deal than Brian Slagle was offering them.
Is that what it was?
Brian Slagle's not known for great deals. Neither is Carl Walterbach, for that matter.
Right.
But Carl Walterbach was specifically looking for, something that was thrashy but wasn't, German thrash. So when he heard what Martin Van Ain had given him from this band, he's like, oh yeah, that's the band for me. So that's why he signed them. And he actually gave them a fairly decent deal for all things considered. He didn't rip them off nearly as bad as he did other bands.
Everybody else.
Yeah. But they still didn't, make, all the money they could have if they were, running the show themselves. But
I think the only thing to note right on this one is that the production is light years better than it
Mhm.
was on the prior 2 albums. So go ahead, Matt, take it away on that one.
One thing to note on this too is this is the first album that Away had started to play with watercolor. So this section right here is all watercolor. The rest of it isn't, but that is. And then moving forward, he did watercolor a little bit more. Yeah, like I said at the very beginning of the stream, this was my favorite Voivod record for a really long time. Some days it still is. It just kind of depends where I'm at mentally that day. But to me, Killing Technology was the perfect bridge album between their crazy, thrashy, punky, war metal insanity of the early days to where they were going. You know, you could easily say, you know, this was their first album in a way. You know, if you ignored the first 2 albums, that those were released under a different name, you know, this is really where the true start of their journey is, in my opinion, just because the weirdness is ramped up here. The punk stuff is gone with the exception of Snake's vocals. Snake's vocals have always been very punkish, and, you know, that's always been a part of their sound, and it still is here as well. But yeah, I mean, this is the one where they started getting more into sci-fi. You know, the first 2 albums are all about war, pain, death, destruction. But starting here is where they really started, you know, reading a lot of Isaac Asimov books and such. So, you know, that started to really bleed into how they wrote songs. And I think a lot of that quirky sci-fi stuff that was really big back in the day, you know, from all those old novels and the magazines and everything that these guys were really into, you know, I think that really affected how Piggy wrote songs as well. You know, that's why the weirdness is cranked up here. I think just that weird, quirky nature of sci-fi kind of translated into his guitar playing style. So when you look at Killing Technology, this one is, it's still kind of rough. It's still kind of raw. You know, I think where they were going on this was perfected with Dimension Hatröss, but this is the perfect bridge album from the crazy thrash to where they were going. You know, you hear the hints of the prog, you hear all of that on this record. It's just still very much amateur hour in a way, but holy hell is a great amateur hour. I mean, they do it wondrously. And my favorite song, hands down, Ravenous Medicine. You know, that's the song. That's the song that makes this album. The music video for Ravenous Medicine is awesome.
It looks like public access hour.
It did. It was so great. Like all of their early music videos look like that. But Ravenous Medicine, man, that's the one song that I just always come back to. Like when I just want a quick blast of Voivod, I usually listen to Ravenous Medicine. If I want something a little bit more on the other side of the Voivod sound, I usually go with Jack Luminous because I really love that song too. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, Ravenous Medicine, Killing Technology, great album. I mean, this thing lived in my car and on my YouTube playlist for a very long time after Voivod, you know, finally clicked with me. So, boom. Those are my thoughts on Killing Technology.
Cool. Very good. And you just said that is your favorite of the whole entire discography?
It depends. I mean, I really enjoy a lot of Voivod records. I have a lot of favorite Voivod records. For the longest time, Killing Technology was my favorite. But like I said, I mean, I think Dimension Hatröss did what Killing Technology was trying to do, but perfected it. I think Dimension Hatröss is the better record, but because Killing Technology was one of my entry points with the band, I'm very preferential to that one. But when I just want to hear weird, quirky, awesome Voivod, yeah, it's either Killing Technology or Dimension Hatröss that goes in. When I want to hear prog Voivod, I listen to Nothingface, you know. But I listen to a lot of the modern Voivod stuff, maybe more these days. We'll get to that in part 2.
Yeah.
But, you know, as far as a favorite Voivod, I can easily tell you what my least favorite Voivod record is. But picking a favorite, it's really hard to do because I mean, they've changed their sound so much through their career. They've always sounded like themselves, but they have different feelings behind their records. And because of that, your feelings for the day can really determine what your Voivod album is for that day.
Yeah, you put it very well. That they at their core, they always sound like Voivod, but every album has dynamic differences that and at first may sound weird, and you're like, and they always seem to drag you in. It always seems to drag you in almost every. There's no two albums that haven't for me, but
well, they're a band where, like, I get it when people don't like Voivod. Like, there's even people in the chat trying to be snarky here, like, but I mean, I get it. They are a weird band.
I feel bad for people that don't get it, because I mean, it's so the music is so rich on certain albums.
You hear that, Nikki? We're talking about you, Nikki.
Sorry, Nikki, but yeah,
I didn't want to call out Nikki.
We love you, Nikki. We love you, but
Nikki, so I'm not going to call him out. But
we love you, but we don't get you, dude.
So I'm sorry, I can't marry you, Nikki. You don't like Voivod, so no.
Yeah, exactly. It'll never work. No. It's not me.
But I get it though. But I get why people don't. I get why, because I mean, Snake has weird vocals. Piggy plays guitar very strangely. It's got a weird pitch to it.
Yeah.
He hits the strings in a really weird way, and it doesn't come together like normal songs. There's a video that Dave Grohl had done a few years back where he just gushes about his love for Voivod. He talks about Voivod for like 35 minutes in this video. And he really hits the nail on the head. Like, he says, when you listen to Voivod, no matter which album it is, like, you're listening to it, and as a songwriter, you can hear it, and you're like, you need to tighten it up. You're not quite there. Like, you're off a step. But then after a while, you realize he's doing that on purpose. That's just how he plays. So everything is a little bit off. But to me, that's always made Voivod, very interesting. The fact that they can play incorrectly
and pull it off.
But still pull it off and be awesome. They're one of the best prog bands because they don't, like, screw your music scales and your music theory and all that crap. They don't give a shit about any of that, and it shows.
There's a point I make, I think, on Hatröss coming up here that, and I don't know, Marty, you write songs, and I play and you play, and Devin even plays too. There's a lot of
I play nothing.
There's a lot of shit that goes on in some of these songs that just shouldn't work. I mean, mind blown. You hear things that are like, how did he come up with 8 different fucking riffs in that song where there's almost 8 different parts, and yet when you take it in totality, it's a killer fucking track. But if you took each part away, it would be like, okay, that's a cool riff, or that's a cool riff, but that's not going to go with that. And like, for me, especially on Hatröss, it really becomes evident. Some masterful arrangement because there's no way that if you aren't almost like a fucking mathematician, you could be putting these songs together. And that isn't just Piggy. I think Piggy was the primary writer for most of their stuff. But I think
it's Away's drums too. He
think
plays very
much
off kilter.
Exactly.
He plays very strangely as well because he's also a self-taught drummer. So
and I think in the early albums, Blackie was pretty involved in writing as well.
I gotta say, I was gonna save this for Nothingface, but if you listen to how Piggy and Blackie interact within a song, within a riff, it's fucking mind-blowing. It's like, I said it in the chat the other day, Matt. It's like they're a long married couple that finish each other's sentences. It's like Nothingface. I'll get there when we get there, but listening to those two interact, it's as a musician, I'm a shitty one, but what they're doing is like God tier shit. I mean, they're constructing these songs that don't sound like anyone else, but the way, they're a 3-piece with a singer. I mean, there's no second guitar player filling in. Blackie does that with his tone and the way he interacts with Piggy's riffs. And it's fucking amazing. You listen to the shit he's playing, it's complex, it's off kilter, it's disjointed, but it fills in these holes that Piggy's leaving him, and sometimes Piggy will stop in a weird spot and Blackie will finish it. It's amazing. It's amazing how they interact with each other.
It's a trip. I got some notes coming up here. Marty, why don't you follow up Matt on Killing Technology?
Well, Matt pretty much, he sized this album up.
Stole it all, yeah.
He did great. And they finally came into the Voivod pure sound. The sci-fi elements suit this band very well. And I really love the songs on this album, especially Tornado. I love Tornado. Great song. Ravenous Medicine. I love the public access styled video. It's so cheesy and funny, but cool. It's different. Order of the Blackguards. What a great fucking song. Absolutely great fucking song. And if you have the vinyl, I have the noise combat pressing of this, but it's missing the song Cockroaches, which is on the CD and the tape.
Yeah.
There was a Cockroaches, like the Thrashing Rage picture disc. There was a picture disc for Cockroaches. I've never owned it, unfortunately, but it's got Cockroaches and one other song on there. I think it's Tornado. I'm not entirely sure, but
I think it is Tornado.
The CD will have Cockroaches on the end, but again, the sci-fi element really suits this band well. Piggy has refined his tone and his style. It sits perfectly. It just sounds like a force, and those chords high up on the neck, as Jeff was talking about earlier, they sound to me like an air raid siren. And it just the way this music is put together and firing, it sounds like a machine that's malfunctioning, but it's malfunctioning the same way every time. It's very cool. It's a very cool sound. And even though they're doing some weird stuff off kilter, don't sound like anybody else, they're still writing songs that stick. They've got hooks. They've got choruses that you remember. Their songwriting chops are right up there. And, even though the sound is bizarre and strange to people that maybe never heard anything like this, they're still composing songs with meaning within it. Where a lot of bands, I think, that are trying weird, crazy shit, they kind of lose sight of writing a good song. They're like, oh, our kooky sound is going to have to carry the load. But no, it's all Voivod proved that they're the full package here.
Well, I think to add on to that real quick, Marty, they wrote these songs that, again, these individual parts wouldn't sound like they should add up to something that is an earworm or a catchy chorus. And
that's they shouldn't work what they do.
Right. And I think that it's like you'd hear something like the song Killing Technology. That's a pretty thrashy tune, but there's a lot of really progressive, weird, angular things going on, and yet it still has a catchy chorus on it that, a lot of thrash bands didn't do that. That are doing that kind of we're trying to do that kind of thing. So, yeah, Devin, what you got on that real quick?
Yeah, even the intro part to Killing Technology, the fast thrash part, the way he does it, that really odd chord he uses in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't work, but it does. I don't know what to say, but you guys basically covered this. But to me, this is definitely where Voivod became Voivod. Arguably my favorite, tied with one coming up later. But to me, this is definitely where they stretched their wings and became closer to a band like, say, Coroner than, say, Sacrifice. They definitely had the more technical edge to their sound. But this, no matter what style they do, they always sound like Voivod. You can tell it's them the second you hear it. So.
Yeah, that's a good point there.
Yeah, favorite song in here, probably Tornado, or the title track.
Tornado. Marty, Nikki wants you to know you can change.
I don't think so.
I don't think you can either. It's the damage is done, man. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
What do we got here? Guys, for those of you coming in later, I haven't really been addressing comments much because I want to keep things moving. But I'll try to get back to some stuff before we end then, if you just hang tough, all right? Okay, for me, I agree with everything you guys said, and I agree with one thing that Devin really said. I think Matt might have said it first. Doesn't really matter who said it first. This is the album that really solidifies who Voivod really is.
One more thing. They could have just done this record and be one of the best one-and-dones ever. Honestly.
True. I guess.
No,
yep.
Because we wouldn't have had to mention Hatröss, and I couldn't live in that world, to be honest.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Do I kick him out now or just wait?
No, we'll wait.
Wait till Nothingface.
I'm gonna wait till Nothingface. Then I'm gonna mute him for the rest.
Yeah,
of
let him continue to make a fool of himself. That's why he's
just
here.
Get your shovel out, Boyd. Yep. Get your shovel out. By the way, for those of you who are getting here late, we decided to have our Paperboy join us tonight, just kind of because we felt bad for him. All right. stop.
He just had his 13th birthday.
Yes, everybody wish Devin.
Yeah, I saw your
happy
note,
13th
you
birthday.
fucking douche.
Yeah,
Thanks.
this is part of his birthday present was allowing him
Yeah.
to hang out with us.
What did I say to you, Matt? I said I'm going to allow him a seat at the big boy table for a night. Yeah, we'll see how he makes out. We'll see if he makes part 2. So far, it's.
I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50 on it.
Same here.
I'm fine. You can come, Devin. It'll be good.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah. Apparently, this sold allegedly 60,000 units. And I gotta think, I would think it would be a little higher than that actually, but that's not bad, I guess. And obviously, the prog tendencies right away are the most noticeable change. Now, suddenly we hear angular King Crimson like guitar work. We hear some Rush start to creep in a little bit. We hear more progressive metal, dare I say, moments, but they're still Voivod type moments. They're not Dream Theater, or which weren't, those bands weren't quite yet. Well, no, I guess Dream Theater was around, but they're not the typical prog metal wank fest. And that's another thing. Piggy was not a wanker, man. That dude didn't fucking go off and play, 3-minute solos in a song. And he served the song quite well most of the time, or all the time, but he came up with things that were just so wholly and totally unique. There's just, I think last night, Marty, I said Bob Vigna's kind of like a player like Piggy, because he just has a very unique style that he doesn't sound like anybody else. And he doesn't sound like a myriad of, I mean, I know you like Rat, and I like Doc and George Lynch, everything. Those guys, and Randy Rhoads today I think was his 40th anniversary of his death or whatever.
Wow.
Crazy. Those guys, and Randy's a fucking monster player. Don't get me wrong. I love Randy Rhoads, but a lot of those guys sound very similar. They have, you kind of know Lynch when he's playing, but you could go, but it could be Warren D. Martini, or it could be Vito Bratta or something like that, Whereas when you hear Piggy, man, if you know metal and you listen to guitar, nobody sounds like Piggy. It's just,
Well, Chewy sounds like Piggy.
That's true. Chewy sounds a lot like Piggy.
Yeah.
We can get to that when we get to part 2.
Yep.
Right away, for me, the production on this album is just light years better, obviously, which I mentioned at the beginning. Killing technology, man. God, that speedy thrash prog. The use of the vocoder. They used a vocoder on this for the vocals. You also start to notice that while Snake hasn't abandoned the vocal stylings of the first 2 albums, it's a lot less prominent. That shouted, strangled sounding vocal that he has is pretty much gone, and he's starting to kind of try to cattle shoot his way into being a little more melodic and a little bit more of a singer. And while Snake would never be, mistaken for Jeff Buckley or an amazing singer, he's totally unique. There's just nobody that sounds like that dude. Kind of like all the guys in the band were just super fucking unique. Overreaction. Oh man, that frenetic beginning with the guitar and that blower bass, angular, dissonant, still melodic. Killer track. Tornado is fucking great, man. That's just such a ripper of a track. Too Scared to Scream. I really like that one a lot. Forgotten in Space is killer. But like Matt said, man, that chugging riff mastery of Ravenous Medicine, all the different little iterations and changes that song goes through.
It's
so fucking good.
bonkers. That song is so bonkers.
It
I
is.
love it.
Also, Blackguards, Order of the Blackguards, lots of
Great
twisting riffs, like tonal riffs but yet it's still hooky, which defies explanation. That's what my note says. Defies explanation how a song like that is still a hooky song, but it is. What I would say about this album is, and maybe you'll agree here, Marty, on this album, these guys became accomplished songwriters.
Yeah.
I don't think they were that on the first 2 albums, to be blunt with you. They were good riff songs, they were good jams, but I don't think they were like really great songs.
I would agree with
on
that.
those first 2 albums.
They figured their shit out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And again, the song structure.
This is where they figured it out. The Killing Technology is the step up.
I think Killing Technology is where they started
but,
it, and I think they perfected it with that album right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there
I
you
agree.
go. There you go.
Let's see what else we got. Oh, and the other thing is too, we didn't really talk about from a songwriting perspective is the crazy ass time signatures in a lot of their songs, where they shift
I never really thought about it. I've heard these songs so many times. It's part of my DNA. It's there, but I don't really like, oh shit, that's a time change. It's so off the wall. It makes sense. Everything that they do is it's weird and it fits them so well,
But exactly. They're kind of, Rush was very well known for doing that with the changing time signatures in a song. The difference with Rush is that Rush usually did it in 8, 10, 12-minute songs, and Voivod was doing it in 5 to 7 minute songs.
3-minute songs.
And sometimes in a 3-minute song, yeah. Killer fucking album, not my favorite album, but certainly probably in my top 3. It's probably number 3 for me. But like Matt said, like we discussed, it's almost impossible to put a definitive top 3 or top 5 together for Voivod, because on any given day you might be like, yeah, today I'm really feeling Killing Technology, but man, tomorrow Dimension Hatröss just fucking kicks it right in the balls and knocks it out of the way. So
I mean, I could easily give you a top 5 right off the top of my head, easy, but to pick the top 1 out of that top 5, it's going to be switching round and around. So
I have a top 1 and then a top 4 at number 2 that on any given day could flip-flop, and it really depends on where I'm at and how I'm hearing them. You know what I mean? All right, let's move on to Dimension Hatröss. Matt? And,
you're all blurry.
This is what we call the departure point.
All right, so that's 6/29/88 that comes out. Again, Noise Records. And that's the last one for it's the last one for Noise, right? Yeah, last one for Noise. And
they signed to the major labels after this one.
Estimated sales of 70,000 plus on this one. Produced by Hatröss Johns, and it was recorded in Germany, as was Killing Technology. I forgot to mention that. I forget on Roar where that was recorded. I think that might have been recorded in Canada. I'm not sure. Hatröss Johns, not a huge name in production, but he's done some pretty major stuff.
He was heavily used by Noise.
Right. And do you remember any of the major things that he did? Was he Godflesh?
I don't remember. I mean, he did a lot of that. Go ahead.
Look up Hatröss Johns' production, Devin. I forgot to do that before I got on there. It's one thing I wanted to do. But again, the artwork on that's so fucking killer. Go ahead, Matt. Let her rip.
So I just wanted to point out earlier when we were talking about the story of the Voivod, when you get here to Dimension Hatröss, these are the souls of the dimension coming into the machine that is feeding the Voivod.
That's right.
And another thing I wanted to point out about this too is this is the only Voivod record that has a chapter of the story of the Voivod on it.
Yeah.
This is the only one where they bothered to put that on here. I don't know why, but so that's an interesting thing here. But I mean, we've already said this in talking about the other albums. I mean, this is where Voivod really became Voivod. This is where they perfected what they were doing. And again, after this one, they kind of became a different band again, almost. I look at Dimension Hatröss and Killing Technology as another brother-sister album, or maybe more a big brother and little brother kind of a situation. So, sometimes I would put Nothingface into it as a trilogy just for the true departure point. But to me, this is where Voivod really perfected everything that they had done so far. After this, they definitely got a lot more proggy, but I mean, this record has it all. This is probably the one that I would recommend to anybody. If I don't recommend Killing Technology for your first Voivod album, I would say Dimension Hatröss, because Tribal Convictions, Chaosmongers, and Brain Scan, Psychic Vacuum, I mean, those songs alone, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've already kind of covered this record just by talking about killing technology.
Little
But
bit.
I think it really does go really well with killing technology as like I said, like a big brother, little brother kind of situation. This is the big brother. This is the one that grew up. This is the one that's got more life experience. This is the one that knows what it's doing. Killing technology is still learning the game, but it's still a good game. So
that's a good analogy. That's a good analogy.
Great records.
Yeah, so I looked up Hatröss Johns. He did Killing Technology and Dimension Hatröss.
We did Killing Technology?
That's what it says, mixing, producer, engineering.
I missed that. I must
I think
not
he
have written
recorded
that down in my
Corner
notes.
stuff too, and
yeah, he did Vendetta, Therion, Tankard.
That's what I was after.
Sodom, Sepultura.
Okay, so he had a deep understanding of the genre and was good. And it's very clear because the production is fantastic on these two albums. They're both superlative productions for me, I think. They sound amazing. Marty, I know this is near and dear to your heart, this one here. So.
This is top 5 album of all time for me. It sits with Awaken the Guardian, Don't Break the Oath. I'd have to think what the other two are, but man, I see this album cover, I just want to masturbate furiously. I love this album so much.
Could I ask you not to do that?
I'll try to refrain. Tonight. I'll try to refrain. Right. But I listened to this album yesterday.
Put the record down, Marty. Put the record down.
I can still sing along with every single word on this album. I've listened since this album came out. I've listened to it a million fucking times, and it's because it's so well put together. The production of Hatröss Johns, he wove together all of the little loose ends that may have been throughout their other recordings into a perfect canvas, a perfect sonic canvas, and the band never sounded more together. The songs are perfectly written. The song Brain Scan is probably one of the best metal songs ever. Holy shit. What a fucking song. And the lyrics, I can sing along with this album, but I don't really ever stop to think what it all means. But the way, it's amazing how Snake or whoever wrote the lyrics for this, he composed a lot of these lyrics without a lot of rhymes, which super rhymey shit bugs the fuck out of me. But they're like really deep lyrical concepts, and for English not being his first language, he's using some pretty big words. He busted out the thesaurus for sure on this album, and it's like pure sci-fi excellence. There's the prog stuff starts seeping into this a little bit. I don't even want to call it thrash metal. It's just like this other entity that sits just outside thrash and prog and looks into it, like maybe reaches in and borrows from each of the genres. But the composition on this is amazing. There is not a bad song on this whole entire album, other than the CD has the Batman song as a bonus, and it's super stupid. It's
dumb.
It's
dumb.
Excellent, Jurgen. Yes. But man, I love this album. This is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. Top 5 for sure. Favorite songs, Brain Scan, absolutely. Tribal Convictions, you can't really. Psychic Vacuum, man, the music of Psychic Vacuum is fucking. What I was talking about, where Piggy and Blackie interact with each other, really evident on that song. They really. We'll get to Nothingface here in a minute, but they're just a unique, atypical force, and it's pure. This album's pure magic. And if Devin says anything otherwise, I'm going to fly out to California and pile drive his balls.
I don't know, man. You're talking about masturbating to the record.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Jumping on Devin's balls. I mean,
masturbating furiously to this record. One of my favorites.
I think we need to move the conversation to
it's worth every stroke. I'm just going to go out there and say it. Every stroke.
Oh, and the guy who produced this, Marty, produced Walls of Jericho, so you can masturbate to that too.
Absolutely.
And Pleasure to Kill by Creator, so.
Yep. Okay, he was very much in the noise. He was in the noise wheelhouse for.
And he did the first Immolation record too, which is kind of odd, but.
Damn. Okay, well. He was pretty happening dude.
Yeah. So this is a great record. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's not. That'd be stupid to say, but I still.
Yeah, but you're pretty good. But you're pretty good at stupid. So, go ahead.
Why?
Go ahead.
Fuck you. So this is a good record, but I still prefer Killing, honestly.
Oh my god.
Fuck off. So this, okay, Killing is like thrash with prog leanings. This is basically like prog with thrash leanings, if that makes any sense. It's kind of
I
like
agree with that. I
like
actually
the
do agree with
opposite.
that.
It's very much like a progressive record with some of the thrash stuff coming in, but it's mostly just more progressive. But good record though, but not my favorite, but definitely in the top 5 for sure. But you guys basically said what I was gonna say, so yeah.
Brain scan.
God
man.
damn it! I'm gonna have to go fucking beat myself with a fucking spatula. I actually agree with what he said.
As long as you don't beat off with the spatula.
I don't plan on beating off with a spatula. I'd need a really big spatula. You know what I'm saying? Huh? Anyway,
It's a penis, only smaller.
no, I do agree with what he said that Killing Technology is more thrash than prog, or with prog leanings, and that is more prog with thrash.
Yeah.
I personally feel I love Killing Technology, but I have to say I have not. That was the second album I got was to mention Hatröss, and I remember loving the shit out of it back then. I hadn't listened to that in a very, very long time, and when I threw it on yesterday, I was like, oh man, it was like getting a big warm fuzzy hug. I was
Hand
like,
job.
holy shit, this fucking album is so good. No, it wasn't like getting a hand job.
Put Marty on mute.
Jesus. Jesus Christ.
Marty, did you not take care of yourself this morning?
I was
mean, what
gonna
is
say,
going
man,
on?
seriously,
I'm old.
you
I
want to
don't
jump
care
on over to Pornhub?
I don't care anymore. No, it doesn't matter.
Devin, we could share Pornhub, can't we, on here? Oh, no, we probably can't. Anyway.
Maybe. I don't think you should, though.
Yeah. This album just fucking rules. It is so
man.
good.
So good.
And I'll tell you right there, right off the bat with Experiment, the first song, there are about 8 or 10 different riff sections in this song. And as a guitar player, I'm listening to this going, Jesus fucking Christ, I totally forgot how amazing Piggy was as a player, but more so as an arranger. To put those atonal, dissonant, strange guitar sections together and make it all sound really, really fucking badass, that is a skill. That is not a lot of guitar players could do that. This guy had like some weird different vision of how to play guitar because
Amazing.
and how to, again, I keep going back to we keep gushing about Piggy's guitar playing. I'm more blown away by his arranging in a lot of these songs because just a lot of this shit should not fucking work, and it does, and that's mind-blowing.
That's a great point, man. That's a great point because most people always, you're right, they always talk about how great of a guitarist he is. He's so weird. He's so weird that shouldn't work. Well, a lot of that, has to do with the arrangements.
Exactly. And I don't know that it was all Piggy. I'm sure
I think, like Marty
said,
said, he was probably playing off of what Blackie was leaving for him, and probably what Away was doing. I mean, the three of those together are magic.
I really don't see him coming with a piece like, okay, play it like this. I'm sure
right.
there was a lot of interaction. They'd have to work out shit. There was a lot of shit.
There's some later interviews that I read, one in particular with Blackie, where he does make it a point to say, I helped write a lot of that material. It wasn't all just Piggy, because a lot of people, if you read stuff, it's like, oh, Piggy, Piggy, Piggy. And Langevin actually says Piggy is the one that created and twisted the sound into what Voivod sounds like. And I believe that, obviously. He wouldn't say that.
He was, I think, the elder statesman of the band. He was older than the rest of the guys, and they kind of looked up to him, I think. Yeah.
He was. Yeah, he would have been 62 or 63 now if he was still alive.
Yeah.
And but again, I can't impress it upon you anything more. The arrangements of these songs is fucking stunning, particularly on this album and the next album, in my opinion. Tribal Convictions. Oh man,
great song.
And then it gets into Who's God, Who's Dog. Oh man, it's so fucking cool. Chaosmongers.
Great song.
Super catchy. Super fucking catchy, man.
Away or Snake actually singing a bit. I mean, he's singing a lot on this album.
Yep. But again, here's what my note says. Another angular burning riff into a hummable chorus with Snake's atonal but melodic delivery. And the drumming on that song is really fucking badass too. Technocratic Manipulators. Super chuggy, jazzy at times. There's jazz chords he's using in there. With Snake's animated delivery, and then that psychedelic breakdown there about 2/3 of the way in, where it gets all psychedelic sounding and really trippy and Floydian. And that's where this is the album where you really start to hear the Pink Floyd influence coming over their music. There's that, that spacey, trippy, quasi psychedelic vibe that starts to really creep in to the writing on this album. Brain Scan. That's one super trippy Floydian opening.
Great
into
song.
that chugging propulsive riff with Snake blurting out the lines and that cool chorus. So good, man. So good. That Brain Scan's a killer fucking track, Marty. You're right. That song's so goddamn good.
How was
many
that
songs
song not on the Brain Scan soundtrack, the famous Edward Furlong movie? Anybody with me on that one?
Never seen it.
Nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. Okay,
Actually, I've
anyway,
never
move
seen
on.
that one, man. I should know that one. I don't know that one.
Yeah, it was a Edward Furlong classic that came out after Terminator 2. It's called Brain Scan, and it does not have the song Brain Scan on the soundtrack.
I know that. Yeah, I know that, but I don't think I've actually seen that, though. I'll have to check
It's a
that
piece
out,
of shit.
man.
It's a piece of shit.
Oh, it's
Don't
bad?
watch it.
Okay.
It's a
Okay.
piece of shit. Yeah.
2 more notes on this one. Micro solutions to macro problems. This song's another masterpiece of arranging. It feels like there are 5 different songs in one song, yet it all works. And that's mind-blowing to me. Last thoughts on this. Many of these songs on here are very complex, but don't actually sound complex. That's the weird part of it. As you're listening to them, it often feels like listening to Voivod should be very difficult, yet it never is. That was a thought that kept coming to my mind. This should be harder than it is, but it's not. Now, for someone like Nikki, it clearly is. And like you said, Marty, I kind of feel bad for someone like that doesn't quite. And that's cool, Nikki. We're not shitting on you or anything like that. You like what you like and you dig what
Not
you
at
like.
all.
But
Yeah.
but it's when as a guy that loves Voivod, it's hard for me to hear. It's hard for me to get my head around when somebody says, "I don't get Voivod," because I get him. That's probably why. If I didn't get him, I'd be right there with them. So I'm just glad I get him. You know what I mean? Yeah, they mastered writing very complex songs that are truly bizarre, yet they sound simple. And they're not. I don't mean the word simple in its base form. They sound simple to my ears. They sound pleasing to my ears, and that's what I mean by simple. So, again, this one really defined their truly unique sound, and they started to, it's just fucking mind-blowing album, man. Incredibly listenable. That's the thing that, I come away from.
Production makes it feel like a
point.
warm blanket being put over you. I mean, it's just a weird flowing pulse in the production. It's just perfect for the material on this album.
Yeah, and the production on this album
one thing we forgot to mention about this record too is it's the one and only one that's a full watercolor too. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't dig into that. Unfortunately, I didn't dig too. I'm glad you mentioned that, Matt. Was that in the book?
Yeah, it's in the book, but it just what Marty just said, how the album just feels like a big warm blanket. Watercolor kind of goes hand in hand with that. So I just wanted to bring it up.
All right, cool. We're gonna move on here, Matt. You want to show Nothingface?
Yeah. So like Devin had mentioned, Killing Technology is more thrash and less prog. In my opinion, there's still a little bit of prog on that album, but it definitely leans heavier to the thrash. And then to mention Hatröss leans more on the prog, less on the thrash, but the thrash is still there. Well, then you come to the third part, and you come to Nothingface, which is, in my opinion, where Voivod kind of went full prog on this one. And
hey, Matt, you're kind of
we're losing you.
We're
losing.
Matt, we're losing you a little bit there. Still there? You're suddenly bogging down.
It's like your internet connection's taking a shit. Oh, you're coming back a little bit.
Am I back?
Well, your video's not back, but your voice
pretend
is.
To freeze.
Yeah. You're freezing video-wise, but your voice... Talk a minute.
Hello, can you hear me now? Am I back?
Yeah, now you're moving.
Now you
Okay,
seem to be
okay, so
moving.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it happens from time to time, guys. Where did you lose me? I said a lot. Where did you lose me?
Pretty much the beginning. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I will repeat myself though. I was just talking about how earlier, Devin made a good point, where he said killing technology is, more thrash than it is prog. I think the prog elements are still there, just kind of below the surface.
Agreed.
And then you've got Dimension Hatröss, which is more prog, a little bit less thrash, right? And then you can move forward to Nothingface, which is where the band went full prog, basically. And to me, because of that transition, I often think.
Uh-oh.
Oh, did we lose him?
Uh-oh.
Matt, I think we lost you, dude.
It's okay. He can stay quiet.
All right. Matt, you might want to reboot and come back on. Because it's not on my end, because the other two guys are fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, for once, your internet's not taking a shit. It usually does.
All right, Marty, I'm going to move on to you real quick. Matt, come back in, and we'll come back to you then. Go ahead, man.
Nothingface. There's never been an album I was more anticipating than this album. And when I got my hands on it, when it came out, first day it came out, I was at the store and got it. I was honestly a bit disappointed because the production was very bright, very clean. Every instrument was it sounded very clinical. Snake was way further out in front, highlighted, and he's actually trying to sing more on this album. And it may have highlighted a bit of his inefficiencies here and there, but it took about 5 or 6 listens, and then it finally clicked. And I ended up loving it, spun it a million times. But revisiting it yesterday, I haven't listened to this album in a while. I'll be honest. It's been years.
Right.
I put it on yesterday, blown away. Like I was saying, for me, the big takeaway, I mean, Devin, Matt was telling me you thought this was a meh. This album was kind of meh, which I get it. But if you play guitar, you understand what goes into writing riffs and stuff. But if you're to listen to, like I said, Piggy and Blackie's interaction, never before had they been so in sync and so fragmented, but how the two pieces come together and create the riffs on this album. It's really pretty mind-blowing listening to how the songs on here. And Astronomy Domine, we'll get to that. I knew going in it was a Pink Floyd cover, but I never heard the song. And then going back and listening to the Pink Floyd song, like the that one where they do they do it with the voice. Piggy decided to do that with a guitar line, which was fucking genius, man. I mean,
it's so
absolutely genius how they processed that cover and made it a Voivod song. But for me, oh man, Pre-Ignition.
Marty, real quick before you move on from that, the volume swells. The wah 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 wah, and it's it's so fucking creepy, man. And then Blackie's bass. I mean, it's just so the way they rearrange the song, it's still fairly true to the original, but it blows the original away. And the original is a good tune. It's trippy 60s psychedelic shit with
Sid Barrett song, yeah.
But dude, they fucking just rip it with that. But it was some people argue that why a cover? Because the record company was trying to. Well, it kind of worked on this album. It worked. It got them a lot of attention. It should be noted, by the way. This album sold around 250 to 300,000. It's their best-selling album to date in their history, and it got them tours in the U.S.
with Rush. They opened for Rush in Canada.
Exactly. We're going to talk about that coming up on the next album. Yeah.
But for me, this was a grower album, but when it clicked, it was there. Pre-Ignition, an amazingly great song. A lot of feeling in that song. The Unknown Knows, awesome start to the album. I mean, X-Ray Mirror, another Inner Combustion, great song. There isn't a bad song on this album. Again, I just cannot overstate enough how if people don't come away from this album hearing how amazing of a bass player Blackie is. I mean, he always shown it here and there, but it's really with that clear production where all the elements are really isolated. but when they finally worked, you could hear them working together even more so. It's he's an amazing bass player. He's the perfect complement to Piggy. I mean, he understood the way Piggy played and how he constructed these things, and he was a part of that. And hearing this album, it's evident how big of a part of it he was, because like I said, they completed each other's sentences in the way these riffs were constructed. Very interesting. It's a very again, for being on a bigger label, it's a very unique, forward-thinking album. Very prog. It's 100% prog album. There really isn't a whole lot of thrash on it at all. It's just a very clean prog record that doesn't sound like any prog I've heard. It's just an amazing, amazing album. Great stuff.
Before we move it, we'll come back to you, Matt, here, and let's get your piece in. Probably starting from the beginning.
Yeah, you're back now. You were like,
am I back? Am I still frozen?
Yeah,
you're good.
Let me get a couple of quick historical things that we didn't get in when you started going in the album. Came out October 13th, 1989. They went back to Canada. They were not recording in Germany. They recorded in Montreal. They're still on Mechanic or they went to Mechanic and MCA, which is a major label.
Yep.
But they had Noise in Europe. The production was by a guy named Glenn Robinson, not the basketball player that I'm aware of. That's a little joke there. Anyway, again, most successful album to date. They had a lot of money behind this album from the major deal. I think, for me, the production's incredible on this album.
It's real pristine.
Yes, it is.
That's why I was initially disappointed, because it was a little too clinical. It felt a little too sterile up front after coming off of Dimension Hatröss. But anyway, sorry.
No, were they still signed to Noise, though? Who were they signed to on this record?
They were signed to Mechanic, MCA. Mechanic was I guess a subsidiary label. So it's a major. They did have Germany. In Germany, they were still on Noise, though, I believe, from what I read.
They were. My press is Noise International Pressing, licensed from Mechanic / MCA Records.
So there you go. So distributed over there. Yeah. I'll the rest of it. I'll let Matt and Devin do their thing, and then I'll put my notes in there. Go ahead, Matt. So we talked about.
I'm kind of afraid to talk about it, because every time I talk about this record, I freeze up, and I have no idea how much you actually heard from what I said before.
We heard the fact that for this was more the prog album, whereas the last one was more prog versus thrash, and the other one was more thrash versus prog.
Okay, so to me, this album can make those two albums a trilogy in a way, just because of that transition that goes through these three albums, and this is where it ultimately leads to and ends. That was my only point that I was trying to make there, and apparently my computer didn't want to let me make that point. But this is also the first. It might be. No, it's the main album where they switched from real artwork and went to just straight up computer.
All digital,
artwork. All digital. This is like MS Paint style artwork, and boy, does it look terrible on a vinyl record. Not so bad on a CD. But
it's kind of pixelated. It's kind of pixelated on the.
It's very pixelated. So much so that when I bought this record, I thought it was a bootleg at first, just because it's so pixelated. But it's not. That's just the way that it was, really. But to me, this is a perfect prog record. It is an excellent record. I love the Astronomy Domini cover. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan anyway, but yeah, I love that song. I love pretty much every song on this album. Nothingface is probably my favorite. Pre-Ignition is great as well, but really this is where I would say the band really reinvented themselves again, because where they go from this record, you could kind of put Nothingface, Angel Rat, and Outer Limits as its own trilogy.
Yep.
I think it still fits pretty comfortably with Killing Technology and Dimension Hatröss as well. I had mentioned earlier, this is kind of the end of the story of the Voivod. This is where he has given up. He has disappeared into his own mind. That's why he's a prisoner of his own mind. He's got different personalities that are coming out. He is the Nothingface. There is nothing there left anymore. He does come back for Phobos, but that's a different story. And yeah, I think that all fits very, very well with this record. And even on the back, those images fit the songs really well, I think. I mean, they're crappy MS Paint artwork, but, it's good stuff, though. I wouldn't say this is a favorite Voivod record of mine, but it's a great prog record. I mean, I would rather listen to Nothingface than anything Rush ever did. True.
Okay. Is this where I remove Matt from this stream, or?
No, I have a differing opinion, and that's okay.
I agree. Here's the thing. I think, and Marty's away, but I wouldn't be shocked if he agreed with me. Nothingface is the transitional album, like you said, the final part of the trilogy, the first trilogy, and the beginning part of the second trilogy. And what I think the major delineation there is, they are not a metal band anymore. And I'm not saying that they're not metal, but they're not a metal band. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're not.
Well, the thrash is gone. The thrash isn't there.
They're not doing. But even the heavy riffage that was on Dimension Hatröss is replaced with a lot more complex sound that Piggy's going for on Nothingface. And so I'm not saying they're not metal. I'm just saying they're not metal.
But the bass is still kind of metal. The bass is still distorted and cleaner, but distorted. And
right.
Yeah.
Like they'll be playing shows with Fate's Warning instead of Creator. Like they go more on that side.
But you know what? That's the interesting thing about Voivod. They could have done that all throughout their career. They could have played with prog bands or metal bands, in my opinion. Except for maybe the first two albums.
That'd be kind of odd if they played with Road with Fate.
Go ahead, Devin. You were gonna enlighten us with your information or with your opinion on this album.
Well, this is the only one we're talking about tonight that I don't own. It's for a reason. This one still doesn't click with me. I've tried a bunch. I don't know what it is about this record. I like some more proggy stuff. It's kind of like the King Crimson metal record, I guess you could say, but there's some good stuff on it. I just maybe need to listen to it more. It'll click with me eventually, but it's not bad. I can see there's great songwriting, just not for me. Or maybe my mood recently, but
this is the only one you don't own of the first 7?
Yep. I have the last 2 we're talking about too.
That's bizarre because it's their most popular record.
Yeah.
Interesting. Phil, I don't know. This is 1989. I'm betting it's analog.
It's got to be analog, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, they may have used a digital board because digital boards came in around 1980, but I think it's still 2-inch tape. I'd bet my life on it that's 2-inch tape on that. So this is my entry point. This is my first album. I love this fucking album. It's my favorite one. And after not listening to it, like you said, Marty, would you say 6-7 years you haven't listened to it?
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's probably been maybe not as much for me, maybe 3 or 4. I threw it on yesterday. It was immediate, man. I was just like, God damn, I love this album. I love everything about it. But when I got it, I didn't understand it the first 4 or 5 plays through.
Me either.
I just was like, this is too fucking weird, man. This shit's just too strange. But it immediately, once it connected, it was like I felt like I had a little secret that nobody else knew out there, which is dumb. But we all, as metalheads, we always want that band that only we know about and nobody else knows about. We can enlighten everybody about. But in my circle of friends, nobody knew about Nothingface and Voivod. Nobody. I was the guy that was turning people on, and a lot of them were like, this is fucking weird, dude. This is fucking strange. If they got it, they got it. If they didn't, they didn't. But for me, once it clicked, I was like, man, I got this band that virtually nobody else likes. This is so fucking cool. And I agree with what Matt said. It's this almost kind of perfect prog record in a lot of ways, even though it's in a lot of ways it's not your mom's and dad's prog rock. It's not it's not Jethro Tull. It's not King Crimson.
It's Voivod being prog. That's what it is.
Right. And
all of their weirdness that they have been building up to
distilled into this.
Distilled through a prog lens, and you have Nothingface. Yeah.
Yep. That's
and again, I don't know if anyone mentioned it while my computer was taking a shit, but I think the main reason why Nothingface is their highest selling record, it was only because their video for Astronomy Domini got a lot of MTV.
No doubt.
A ton,
No doubt.
yeah.
They didn't have another big single off that album. Their commercial viability left after that album.
Exactly. Yep.
I mean, it was just another band from that time in the 90s where you got really big by doing a cover song.
Yeah.
So,
and they tried. They were supposed to shoot a video for Unknown Knows.
right,
And
the record label didn't want to give them the money for it.
Right,
So.
pulled the money. Because keep in mind, back then MTV videos usually cost $200,000-$300,000 to shoot a 5-minute video, and that's kind of obscene. But that's the way it was back then, and that's how you were being discovered. But you are exactly right, Matt. That song, the Astronomy Domine cover, was pretty much the entirety of why this album sold the way that it did, and why they people discovered them. I wouldn't have discovered them without that. I'm pretty sure.
It was huge. It was huge, that cover.
So real quick, I've got incredible production, perhaps a little less heavy, more proggy, and again complex arrangements in angular but very melodic songs. Snake's still strange, but slightly more melodic in singing, more noticeable song structures. I.e., there were the angular weird songs like Experiment on Dimension Hatröss that had 7 different guitar parts. You didn't have that as much on Nothingface. It was a little more. It was still strange and it was still odd, but it was a little more streamlined in a verse, chorus, middle 8 chorus sort of structure. Bass, Marty mentioned it. Bass is extremely prominent on this album. It's it's so in your face and it's just palpable. You can hear Blackie's playing and he plays off a Piggy and he's just again great fucking bass player. The Unknown Knows, killer melody, melodic opener. Nothingface, I love that song, man. It's so weird, but it's catchy. Astronomy Domine, we'd already talked a lot about. Missing Sequences. There's so much going on compositionally in that song. Missing Sequences, I love that song. Let's see. X-Ray Mirrors kind of, in my opinion, sounded like the most Dimension Hatröss type song on there. What else do I have? Oh, Into My Hypercube. I love that one because it's really dark, but super melodic, and it's just weird. It's weirdly pulsating, that song. When it transitioned into that really weirdo chorus on there, really cool. Let's see what else here. Sub Effect, another melodic rocker with weird angular breakdowns. Like, again, this one is kind of very Dimension Hatröss again on that one there. This is my first album, my sentimental favorite, but it's so goddamn cool. This album is to me. I make no apologies for thinking it's their best, but again, Dimension Hatröss, all the other ones could be second behind this, and I would have an almost impossible time figuring out which one to pick. All the songs, as Matt said, in the Voivod narrative are about inner struggles of the missing sequences. I'm sorry, it's about inner struggles of the Voivod. Missing Sequences, by the way, is about Alzheimer's disease, which if you read Away's book, he talks about the fact that he grew up right around an aluminum factory, like a refining factory.
He's diagnosed schizophrenic.
Who was?
Away is a diagnosed schizophrenic. He used to use art to escape from
shit, for real?
He's schizophrenic, yeah.
Oh, wow, I did not know that. That's pretty incredible. All right. We're moving on to Angel Rat. This should be interesting to hear what everyone has to say about this one.
So we're getting down to the wire here with Angel Rat. We've only got one more record to talk about after this one.
Yeah, man.
But this is one I do not have on vinyl because I don't think it's been pressed on vinyl.
It's coming out.
It's coming out for Record Store Day, I know.
Yeah.
But this is where a lot of people think Voivod crapped the bed, shit the bed.
Yep.
You know, they were chasing that that major record label money, trying to get that radio money, and this is often considered their worst album, their commercial rock album. And you know what? I actually really like this record.
I do too.
It's not a favorite I would never put this in my top 5, but I think it's a totally listenable Voivod record. It's just different. It still has some of its weirdness, but it's definitely Voivod trying to be a commercial rock band. So it's still weird because they're all weirdos. And that definitely still comes across on this. This is the first record that Blackie wasn't on. I think he comes back. He comes back on the Outer Limits, but I don't think Blackie actually plays.
No, he's not on Outer Limits. He's not on Outer Limits. He doesn't come back till after the J Sonic thing happens. He comes back on Planet.
I think
Planet
he
Earth.
actually plays bass on this or the Outer Limits. He actually is like sessions. I don't remember.
No, he hang on. He plays bass on Angel Rat the entire album.
Yeah, but
he's not pictured on it though.
No, he's out of the band at this point, but he did play on it.
No, he quit, and here's the deal. We didn't talk about. I keep jumping out of my own fucking thing. This was issued on 11/12/91, and this is very important notation here. It was produced by Terry Brown, and Terry Brown was the longtime producer of Rush from Fly By Night through the Signals era, and this was a record company recommendation. Let's get Terry Brown in here. That Marty mentioned it earlier. They opened for Rush during the Nothingface interim between Nothingface and this album.
In Canada,
they opened 4 nights in Toronto in May of 1990, and they were really blown away by the reception that they got. They were scared they were going to get booed off the stage and have shit thrown at them, and they were actually really, really well received. The reason Blackie left the band was, and I've got it straight from an interview with him, was because he did not feel that Terry Brown was the right guy to do the production on this album. He felt that Terry Brown was going to push them to be more palatable to American audiences, and he didn't feel that it fit the material. Piggy was on the fence, and Snake and Away felt like they wanted to go with Terry Brown. He was a big name. The record company was throwing a lot of money at him, and the record company wanted a hit of an album with this album. They wanted a more commercial thing. Blackie wanted a meeting with the guys. They ended up getting together, and he was outvoted 3-1. And he said, "Well, if you're going to go with Terry Brown, then after he recorded, he got into it with Terry Brown in the before the final mix, and he just quit."
Yeah, it says here Blackie plays bass and keyboards on the album.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, one important addendum to what you just said, Jeff, was up until this point, Voivod still hadn't made any money.
Yep.
They were a popular metal band. They were doing really big, huge tours. They were doing the things you're supposed to do to be able to live off of your band, and they weren't really doing it. They were still broke at this point. So I think when you're on a major record label, you've got a lot of pressure from the label heads to work with a big main known producer. Yes, they're going to push you into a more commercial direction. We're still going to let you be you. You're still weird. You're still Voivod, but you just toured with Rush and you were really well received with the Rush fans. We're going to push you more into that kind of a direction. I can see why 3-1 they said,
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that, because I am tired of eating ramen noodles every night. I'm on MCA Records. I've got a bunch of tours under my belt. I still can't afford a cheeseburger. I can only afford ramen noodles.
And keep in mind, Terry Brown had Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures, Signals. Those are some pretty big fucking records, man. I mean, really big records.
Didn't he also record some Overkill stuff?
Terry Brown?
Or was that Terry Date? Never mind.
That's probably Terry Date, I think.
Never mind.
Yeah, Terry Date was the Pantera dude. I don't know. Devin could look that up.
I'm checking right now. Let's see.
But no, Matt, you killed it with that point. That is absolutely the dynamics. From what I gather, Blackie was always kind of the guy in the band that was doing it more for the scene and more for the music. And I think that the other 3 guys, like you said, they wanted to make some money, man. They wanted to finally.
I think they all were. I mean, I think they were all in it for the art. I mean, if they wanted big money from day one, they wouldn't have sounded like how they sounded up until this record.
Right.
I think it was just they've been doing it for so long and have nothing really to show for it.
Yeah.
To be MCA Records, which is a huge record label of the day, and be making pennies, I think they're like, yeah, let's try it, guys. Let's just try it. And this was the result, and it was mixed results with the fan base.
There's
I
one
think
more.
it's a great record. I think it's a great record. But
One more point to add to that, though, is that MCA was actually in the process of starting to go into bankruptcy before when this album was being produced, actually. And Blackie knew that. And I think he had the feeling that they were going to get fucking short shrifted. And they did. The record label did virtually nothing to promote it. They did one video for Clouds in My House. And that was it. The thing came out and it just kind of fucking died on the vine in a lot of ways.
And same thing happened with the Outer Limits, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that
even more
came
so
out
with
through
that.
Mechanic Records as well. That had zero promotion. It had less money put into it. It didn't have the big producer. If you thought this one died on the vine, I mean, nobody even knew the Outer Limits came out.
Yeah,
you know? It was just totally ignored.
Again, MCA Mechanic was in litigation at that point, trying to reformulate under bankruptcy, or bankruptcy laws. So, Marty,
so what little money they had was not going to Voivod.
Voivod, exactly.
Yeah. Well, the problem is
that record led to them essentially breaking up, and we'll touch on that a little bit more at the beginning of part 2, probably.
Yep.
But the Outer Limits was pretty much the end of Voivod for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think just the negative emotions that were attached to Angel Rat bled into the Outer Limits, made that a better record. I think Outer Limits is better than this one, but again, those are brother sister records too.
They are.
So I'm getting ahead of myself. I just wanted to say, for Angel Rat, I don't think it's awful. The people that say this is an awful record, they're wrong. I mean,
I agree.
It's commercial, I guess, but it's Voivod doing commercial rock. I mean,
exactly. They're still too weird to be commercial.
It's still weird as shit. Yeah. So, it's still Voivod. So I think it's great. And it's a dark record too. I mean, it's weird. It's just another weird, dark, quirky record that's just a little bit more geared towards the radio, but not really. Like, could you imagine hearing any of this on the radio? No.
Actually,
they're not playing this. They're not playing this next to a Ghost song. So
no, but the one song that didn't get picked, which I think could have, is The Prow. I think that could have been a song that could have been a radio song. But I mean,
what about there's like the closest they ever got to a ballad on here, so maybe that one.
Yeah, but the ballad was kind of on its way out in 1991. I mean, they were kind of made fun of at that point. This was around the time where grunge was starting to slap dicks all over the place.
Yep.
So
true.
You got you got Soundgarden, you got fucking Alice in Chains, you got all those bands are really ascending right now. Nirvana, obviously, and they don't sound anything like any of those bands. And this album doesn't sound like any of that stuff. So
there was the world was not a kind place for a band like Voivod in 1991.
Agree.
So.
The part of the thing is they're talking about how they haven't made any money. Okay. I mean, being in a band, you sign to a bigger label. I'm sorry, but major labels do not hand out money for funsies. We're going to use Terry Brown to produce this album. Any bit of money that a record label puts out for you to a producer or whatever, it's like you're taking a loan out against yourself.
Exactly.
So every little bit of money, tour support, anything, if a record label puts in merch money, if a record label puts in, and a big producer like Terry Brown is not just 10 grand, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a big name attached to record your record. So for them to go, woe is us, we haven't made any money. I'm sorry, but you're not selling the units as Voivod to recoup your money that's been loaned to you to get a bunch of money back. I feel bad, but it's kind of they should have known agreeing to these big ass fucking producers that they're not going to ever sell enough units to recoup that loan and actually put food on their plates. But anyway, having said that, this album, when it came out, I bought it on tape the day it came out, and I was fucking furious. I fucking hated this. I'm sorry, but after coming off of Dimension Hatröss and coming off of Nothingface, I did not want to hear rockin' Voivod. The first song, Panorama, it's the first ever kind of rockin' Voivod riff. I fucking hated it. And I hated, and there's a couple songs on here that I'm like, okay, that's passable. It sounds like Voivod. But for many years, I fucking loathed this album. And my friend and editor, Jeff Wagner, was always like, dude, you need to give it up on that album. It's amazing. That's one of my favorite Voivod records. Absolutely gotta. I'm like, dude, you are pissing up a rope or something, because this is not good. It's not good. It took many years and a little bit of maturity to I listened to this album a couple times this week and I like it now. It's like the hard edge cult guy that was listening to extreme death metal and thrash and black metal finally embraced the greatness of this record. I mean, Panorama, it's an okay, it's kind of rockin' Voivod, but Clouds in My House is a great song. The Prow is an amazing song. Let's see. None of the Above, great closer to the album. I hate the artwork. I still to this day hate the artwork. It's just piss poor.
I love that artwork.
I like the color scheme, but I just don't like.
I know it's digital, but
yeah.
The digital shit,
was bummed Blackie was kind of fading out. I remember watching back in the day a couple interviews with Voivod where they were saying that if one of us ever left the band would be done. They said that a bunch. That was like the big thing. And now you're starting to see cracks in the foundation. And it took a major label and not being able to eat and business decisions that started showing fractures, and which would expand even more so when Snake left the band. But I like this album now. It's Voivod. It's still very proggy to me, but they entered some more rock elements as well. I mean, this is a band that is still in a constant state of evolution. I don't necessarily think that they went. I don't think they were trying to be commercial on this. I think they were heading in a less busy, less cluttered sound. I mean, Nothingface was a prime example. They cleaned up that sound immensely, which it worked really well. But on this, they just seemed to want to go for less dense songs, and they just wanted to mellow it out a little bit. And I don't necessarily, because this still doesn't sound like a very commercial album to me. It sounds like Voivod.
I don't think it does at all.
It really, for someone to say they went commercial on this, it's like, I mean, really? I mean, because this is going to, if it's an attempt at commerciality, they swung and missed. I mean,
they failed miserably.
They failed miserably. And I feel bad they weren't making money at this time, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look that, look, all these labels, they're not giving us this money. They're loaning us this money. We have to pay it all back. And you don't get an ounce of money until that loan is paid off. That's the way it goes.
Keep something in mind here, Marty. I if I could add something to
that's
a great analysis. That's a great analysis of it. But I'm thinking from, as Matt said, from the perspective that if the label comes to you and says, look, we think you're poised. You're right there. You're on the precipice, man. We think we want to put you with a really top-notch producer here. That's what's going to put you over the edge. And like you said, a lot of people don't understand the music business, especially back then when labels were gigantic and they were like a giant clearinghouse, a loan facility. They were a bank for you as a band. And I can see that the allure of, hey, we're going to bring in Terry Brown. He's got a 12 million seller in Rush Moving Pictures and Signals with 5 million or 6 million or whatever it was. Those are big numbers back then. Those are huge numbers, and there's a lot of money to be made right there, particularly if you get on tours where you are now the headliner and you're playing the small sheds or the big theaters and you graduate up. I can totally see where Snake and Away and Piggy were going, yeah, you know what? We're so close, but this is what we might need to get us over the hump. And I personally, if I was in that place that they were in, it would be really hard for me to say, no, man, we got to stay true to our artistic vision here. And we don't need to have a giant hit. they wanted to have a giant hit. There's no doubt about that. They wanted to
Well,
have
they
a hit.
tasted it with Astronomy Domini.
Well,
They had
right.
taste.
it depends though. If you have a second job besides the band, I can see going, like not going with him. If the band is your job, then I can definitely see you want to go in a more commercial direction.
Well, and it was.
And
the-
Away
they-
did. Away had a job. He was making money. He was the only person in the band who was making money outside of the band because he had his graphic
Right.
art stuff going on.
Right.
So,
But generally speaking, the rest of the guys were the band was their day job and their night job, and they had to go all in to see if they could make it work and make it happen. And it became an issue with Blackie, and there, from what I gather and what I read, there was a lot of animosity between him and Away because both of those two guys were kind of vying for the control of the band from a political standpoint. In other words, they wanted to be the guy that was in charge of the power dynamics of the business end of it. And it sounds to me a lot like Away was trying to keep Blackie out of seeing certain things. Maybe there was monies that he felt he was due that, Away was keeping him from seeing. I don't know. He didn't get into that kind of specific, but it was very clear to me that a lot of the animosity that developed and why he left over the Terry Brown issue also stemmed to business and had a lot to do with Away and his relationship and who wanted to be in charge of the band, which is very interesting. So, all right, Devin, what do you got on this one?
Well, I'm probably crazy, but this is honestly in my top 3 favorites.
And you
I
don't
think
like
you're crazy.
Nothingface.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
That's
but-
craziness. But whatever, man.
Yeah.
It's all good.
You want another bad opinion?
Sure.
Well, you're full of them, so go ahead.
I like this better than Dimension Hatröss.
Oh, dude, you are
Oh,
smoking
oh.
crack.
kick him the
Yeah.
fuck off. Get him out of here. I'm sitting here trying to eat dinner off camera, and this little piece of shit says that. Get him the fuck out of here.
Yes, I will say that.
Well, we only have one more album to go, Matt. So I'll let him stick around. But I will say that his addition for part 2 is definitely in question at this point.
Yeah, probably, but oh well. This is like the atmospheric rock record. 'Cause there was a lot of atmospheric stuff on here.
Yeah,
It's an alternative rock album, is what. it is,
Exactly,
in a lot of
but
ways.
better than all that stuff. Honestly, I'm not really a fan of that style. But if you're not, I've seen people say they're not a fan of Voivod, they don't get it. Honestly, I think this is the record I would recommend. It's the most normal, though it's still Voivod, so it's still kind of odd. But if you're like not feeling it, you can't get into this band. I suggest this one because it's like the closest they got to being normal, but it's Voivod, but. Good record. I don't get why people hate it, but I wasn't a beat of sweat my dad's nuts when this record came out. So maybe if I was like one of those guys who followed them from the beginning and heard this record, maybe I'd have a different opinion. But I wasn't alive back then, so I don't. So
It's a definite grower.
There's
And for
that.
me, I was super disappointed at the time.
I could
but-
see why.
Hey,
but
hold up.
I loved
hold
it
up.
instantly. So
Hold up. Stop a minute. Blinded Inside. I gotta check you, bro. You made a comment about Marty and not knowing Marty. It's clear you either don't know our dynamics or don't know our personalities here, but Devin is a good friend of ours. He's been on a lot of streams with me all the time. I call him a cocksucker and a dumbass all the
they
time.
always give me shit. I'm used to it. I don't give a fuck.
Hold on. It's all meant in good fun, and he knows it, and we know it. We don't care what his opinion is in terms of we're just having fun with it. You need to chill out or not come to my streams, okay, bro?
I just
I'm
need
just
to
telling
grow
you.
up.
Well, we
I'm
know
just
that.
telling you. I mean, the thing that you said about Marty, you clearly don't know what's going on, dude. I mean, Marty's so depressed. Marty, how depressed are you? Are you pretty depressed?
Well, I'm fine.
Oh, no. Well, hey, man, I got some extra Prozac if you want me to send it
No,
out
I'm
to you.
good. All
Just
good.
kidding. Marty does know that. Apparently, you don't know much about Marty, man, because he talks about other genres of music a lot. So, dude, I'm just gonna tell you, you can leave, man.
Say,
I'm just telling you.
didn't you say your favorite band is Kiss a while ago?
Fuck yeah.
Okay, can you kick him out now?
The guy's joking. Anyway, he's joking.
I mean Marty
All
for
right,
saying
if
his
you're
favorite
joking,
band's
that's
Kiss.
cool, but it didn't seem like you were joking. Devin and I go way back now. Way back a year.
Yeah,
ago.
like a year and a half. That's
Way
so bad.
back in 2020.
if you ever saw the text message conversations we had, they are truly offensive to most human beings.
Probably.
If you have feelings, you don't want to be. So if you're kidding around, that's cool. If you're kidding, that's cool. But it seemed like I read that shit as a little bit more deeper. So I apologize if that's the case. But all right. Anyway, so go ahead, Dan.
I was eating dinner. What did I just miss? What happened?
Nothing. We're moving on.
Okay.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, I'm done with my shitty opinion.
No, I know other people that love that record too, man. Like I said, and listening to it again, I'm singing along with it, so I've listened to the album enough to know it. But man, I was so furious when that thing came out. Holy shit! It was like, what the fuck are they doing? But now I get it, and it doesn't sound like that big of a departure. It still sounds like Voivod,
Okay, I'm done.
All right, so some stuff you guys didn't talk about. The production on here, which is fantastic, which you would expect. Terry Brown's a fucking amazing producer, so that's kind of a done deal. This was recorded at Metalworks Studios. Does anybody know who and what Metalworks is?
No.
Metalworks Studios is owned by three dudes named Gil Moore. I don't think Mike Levine and the third guy, who may or may not be part of the partnership anymore, is named Rick Emmett. Anybody know those three guys?
Yeah, from Triumph.
Yeah, Triumph. Metalworks is Gil Moore's studio, or studio.
Right on.
Super fucking popular. Has created so many massive fucking records have gone through Metalworks. It's insane. So again, we're not only talking about a high-end producer now, we're also talking about a super high-end production facility that they're using here. We talked about Blackie and why he left. He did come back in 2008. Interesting side note on this. It was thought that the master tapes for this, the last trilogy, as it were, The Outer Limits, this album, and Nothingface, were lost in the Universal fire. Turns out that Blackie was very persistent with somebody at Universal in trying to find these and locate them, because he was pretty sure they weren't where they said they were, and they found them in some storage facility in Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Which is kind of interesting. And he now owns them, but that's strange, because why does Blackie have possession of master tapes that you would think theoretically, unless they got them in the settlement with MCA when the bankruptcy occurred? That's the only thing I can think of. It just seems odd that Blackie has them and he's not even in the band. That just seemed like an odd story. Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, so one of the things I noticed big time on this album, and Marty, I think you might have alluded to it a little bit, Matt, too, is that Piggy's guitar work isn't quite as outstanding on this album. It's still there. It's still angular and weird. It's still cool.
He normalized
but it's not.
a lot.
It's a. What's that?
He normalized a lot.
Well, it's more. He's playing it straight more on this album a lot of the time. Again, he's not doing blues riffs or anything like that. Although he does do one in. Oh shit! Was it the Prowl? The Prowl's got kind of a bluesy lead in it.
Yeah.
But Piggy's playing more like a regular rock guitarist on this album. And again, I call this more their alt rock album than I do alt prog rock album. Than it's definitely not a metal album. More radio friendly, less angular, less weird. Generally shorter songs too. This album has a lot of shorter songs on it. I like Panorama. I love that groove to it. I love the chords he's using on there. I think it's a cool opener. Clouds in My House was the MTV video. I'm not too crazy about that song. It's all right. The Prowl, I fucking love that song. I just love that song. And they almost always do it live too, by the way. Best Regards, probably my least favorite song on the album. It's okay. It's just kind of generic sounding. Twin Dummy. This is super fucking weird. More like the Voivod that we all love from Nothingface and Dimension Hatröss, really good. Angel Rat is a really trippy, bizarre, moody, slow developing song that gets kind of strange. But Gollum, man, I love fucking Gollum. It sounds like a Rush song with Snake singing on it, obviously. The Outcast, that's a weird song. I don't really like that song. It's got harmonica in the beginning, I think. It sounds like it's keyboard, but it sounds like harmonica, which is very strange. But probably my favorite song on the album, other than The Prowl, is New Age Fractal. that song is so fucking cool, and it's got a real kind of weird edge-like sound to the guitar. That really sort of spacious, chorusy, you know, not digital, delayed sort of sounding riffs on it. And yeah, it was definitely a change in the heaviness, and is a lot more of an artsy fartsy sort of album. And it was, you know, their whole plan to try and commercialize a little bit in their weird way just didn't really work. But I think the album's a great album. I love it. I definitely would put this in my top 5, no question at all. When I listened to it earlier today, I was totally digging it. And then I found some demos, which I didn't know. You guys know about them, the demos that are out there for Angel Rat? They're on YouTube, I believe.
Oh.
There's one song on there that's not on the album, and it's a different running order. And you can hear some differences in some of the songs, nothing major. It's mostly lyrical, and some of the melodic vocal lines are a little bit different. But there is a song on there called Nomads. Whew. It doesn't even sound like Voivod, man. It sounds like a fucking 90s rock band, man, like the Gin Blossoms with heavier guitars or something. I have no idea what they were thinking with that track, and thankfully they left it off the album, but it's bad. It's the first time I can really say I've heard a latter-day Voivod track that was really kind of shitty, actually. All right, last one we're going to head into here, Matt. You done eating dinner?
All right. We are all the way up to The Outer Limits.
Yep. Came out August 3rd, 1993. Produced by Mark Berry. No clue who that guy is. Never heard of him before. Again on Mechanics, MCA. Recorded in Hollywood at Music Grinder Studios. And the last to feature Snake until his return in 2002. And the first without Blackie. And there was a session guy named Pierre Saint-Jean, who played on it. So one last little note on that, and I'll let you rip there, Matt. Real Gone Music, is that what they're called here?
Yes,
yeah,
Real Gone.
Music.
Real Gone's who did that vinyl that I showed.
Right, and they did it in red and blue, I think.
Yes.
Okay. And I think they were limited, weren't they? Weren't they limited like 1,500 copies or something?
Yeah, they didn't do a huge press run of it, and it sold out like that. So
immediately,
if you didn't get it, you're going to pay for it now.
Well, they did reissue it on. They did reissue it on red with smoke. And I think
they just did another repress of it. I'm talking about the initial,
original,
the initial pressing that Real Gone did.
Yeah. All right, man. So go ahead, hit me with your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so I've got both versions. I've got the Real Gone vinyl, and I have the original that came with the 3D booklet that comes with the 3D glasses. This was really big on cassette form at the time. Most people that I know who have this record, they have it on cassette, which I always
I bought it initially on cassette. Yep.
But I mean, it's really cool. You got the red and the blue. And initially, this was supposed to be the album cover. The album cover was supposed to be the Jack cover. And, you probably won't be able to see it for realsies, but there you go, whatever. That's not going to work. But, that was supposed to be the original artwork. And the record label decided that was a better piece of artwork to use. So that's what they use. Now, viewers of The Dark Path, does that look familiar?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It looks like my logo. Doesn't
there it is.
There it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Where you stole it from.
Yeah, there you go. So, this record, I love this record. Outer Limits is in my top 5 for Voivod records. I like it a little bit better than Angel Rat because it still feels like Angel Rat in a way, but it feels like much more of a Voivod record than Angel Rat did. My favorite song is Jack Luminous. I think that is just a fantastic 12 or 14 minute long song.
17:26.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super long song, but it doesn't feel like it is. It's the only song I can think of that is that long that feels like it went by in like 5 minutes. Like it just flies by. It is such a wonderfully crafted song. It's one of their best. And the rest of the record, like I can't really pick another song that I like as much as Jack Luminous. I think that's really the star of the show for this record. You know, the artwork is great. It's all the 3D artwork. There's so much awesome artwork by Away in here. I mean, he did a lot of cool stuff here. And I know some people have a hard time looking through the red and the blue glasses to get the 3D effect. Some people can do it and some can't. I am one of the lucky people that can see the 3D effect with the red and blue glasses. So I've never had a problem with it. And it looks cool. Like if you listen to this record and read the lyrics and flip through this book at the same time, it's just a very immersive experience. And that really goes to show too, like, you know, the record label kind of threw a little extra money at him for some weird reason. Like this was not cheap to make all this extra crap to put in this album. And it still died on the vine. They still didn't promote it. I don't know who, how, or why any of that was approved. I mean, when Real Gone Music did the repress, it's just a straight repress. There's no 3D stuff on this whatsoever. That's not there at all. So
I'm trying to remember, and I hate to admit this. I thought I had it written down, but I don't. Was there a video for this for Fix My Heart or not?
I don't know.
I don't think there was.
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't recall there being a music video off anything on this record.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jack Luminous. I mean, the whole album to me is about Jack Luminous. That could have been the next Voivod character in a way. But C'est la vie. You know, this was the end. You know, this is where, you know, Blackie wasn't there. Snake had enough. They still didn't make any money. Snake had kind of a drug problem at the time, and it just seemed like the time to just end it because they were dropped from MCA, and that was it. That was it until Jason Newsted resurrected the band. Or no, there's still 2 more albums before they broke up.
No, there's 2 albums coming out. Yep.
Yeah. The Jack Force.
We got to talk about the E-Force records.
Yeah, the Eric Force. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I thought they broke up after the Outer Limits and then came back with Jack Forrest, but that's not right.
No, Black Piggy
Snake had just left the band because of his drug problem at the time, and because
I think he also owned a bar. He also owned a bar, and he had another.
He owned a couple restaurants.
Yeah, so he's like, this isn't it for me anymore.
I think he had a band called Union Made, wasn't it?
He did. Yeah. It was more like a punk band, if I recall.
Yeah.
Like sort of a throwback punk band, if I recall. I didn't really check them out because it wasn't my thing, but I believe it was sort of a punky type, you know, bar band type thing. Yeah. I didn't know he had a drug problem.
I mean, he had a drug problem. I don't know what the drug was.
I heard stories that there was PCP flown around this band for a lot of years.
Ooh, really?
That would make sense.
But I don't know if that's true or not. Don't quote me on that. That's just something I heard.
I never heard that. That's pretty interesting. I could see it though.
Great record though. I mean, I think it's not like a return to form or anything like that, but I think if you were a big fan of Nothingface, there's no reason why you wouldn't also like the Outer Limits. I mean, I think it's kind of almost a return to that style. You know, if this had come out before Angel Rat, that transition would have made a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
But there you go. That's my thoughts on the Outer Limits. I'm a big fan of this record. I think it's great.
There was a Fix My Heart video, but it's like fan made. It's not official.
I didn't think. I was pretty sure that that the record company didn't get behind them on that. Marty, what you got on the Outer Limits?
The Outer Limits for me was a step in a better direction at the time. I mean, like I said, I ended up liking Angel Rat. But there's definitely some Angel Rat isms on this, but you can tell they're like, you know what? That maybe was a little too far off the charts. Let's bring it back to our wheelhouse a little bit more. I think there's a little bit more of a Voivod feel on this album for sure. And, you know, they tried to see if lightning could strike twice, so they covered another Pink Floyd song with the Nile song. Good song. They did a good job on it. And there's just a lot. The strange chords are coming back. The more complex structures are coming back on this album. Fix My Heart's a great opener. It's kind of rocking, but it's got a good feel, good chorus. But Jack Luminous, the 17-minute 26-second is the definite highlight on here. Lost Machine is another great song, very Voivod sounding song. I also like Moonbeam Rider quite a bit, and We're Not Alone is a good way to end. I also have the Lost Machine Jack Luminous promotional radio single as well. They didn't come with a cover; it's just a radio promo. But
wow, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is Voivod trying to get back on track. And listen to this album here yesterday. It's great. I mean, I'm singing along with it. It feels like older Voivod, but yet still in the Angel Rat realm. Like, I think, Matt, you're right. If they would have put this album out first, it would have been the more sensical transition from Nothingface to Angel Rat. But I don't know. Great stuff. And it was Voivod trying to get themselves back on track. And as far as I'm concerned, that's it.
I think we need to note though that at this point though, this was, I don't know whether it was their final album on the contract or whether they were. I never could really establish whether they were going to get booted by the
They were dropped. They were dropped by
dropped?
MCA. Yeah, because
I didn't see that anywhere definitively stated.
Yeah, they were dropped, and it was because, like you had mentioned before, they were going through that whole bankruptcy thing and corporate restructuring. Mechanic Records was shut down, and they were technically signed to Mechanic.
Right.
So when they shut that down, just all of the bands were just kind of gone.
All were just let go.
So it's not like they gave them the pink slip. It's just, the company that gives you your paycheck is no longer
disappeared, and you can go do what you want now. You can go sign with whoever you want. Yeah,
and then they went back to some like small podunk label that no one ever heard of, and
Hypnotic.
That's a story for next week. That's a story. For next
week. Devin, I know Devin here now. He's gonna really enlighten us with brilliance. Brilliant.
So this is tied with Killing Technology for my favorite, honestly. Another shitty opinion. This is what I wish.
It's a good album.
This is what I wish Nothingface sounded like. Though I agree, it kind of came out of order. This should have been in between Nothing. It should have been Nothingface, this, than Angel Rat. Because this is like a good mixture of those two styles. Probably a bad comparison, but when like kind of like Slayer, they did Rain and Blood and South of Heaven. Seasons is the mix of both. This is, I guess you could say, the version of Seasons because it's like a mix of the two previous album styles.
Yeah, that works. It's a good observation.
I know this is their last with Snake for a while. Definitely a good way to go out with him for a while, but arguably my favorite by them. Definitely my favorite of the prog era. Great
so
shit.
Is that that's your number one favorite Voivod record, Devin?
Tied with Killing Technology.
Right on. I don't know if you were there when I said it, but it's in my top 5. So.
Oh yeah, I heard you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great record.
Has some good like up tempo stuff, and then some of the more atmospheric stuff that was on Angel Rat.
Yeah. So what's your favorite track on there?
Probably Long Way Street, Lost Machine, or We Are Not Alone.
That's good. You didn't go with the obvious choice.
What, the Jack Luminous?
Yeah, the Monster Prog epic. That's cool. Couple quick thoughts on this one here from me. Let's see. I actually really like "Fix My Heart," man. That's got some good riffs in it. Great lead off track. Still, has a little bit of the Angel Rat vibe to it, and it's not metal, but it's got a good chuggy riff to it, and it's very memorable. And Moonbeam Rider. I fucking love this tune, man. This has just tons of cool melodies, extremely atmospheric, very spacey proggy. It's a killer track. I love that one. The guitars on it are so cool, and this is one of those Dimension Hatröss like tracks, only not as as heavy as Hatröss, but it's got all the different dynamics going on with the guitar parts that you're like, if you listen to that, there's like tons of riffs in that song. I just fucking love that song. Le Pont whatever, Noir. Super cool building prog metal, beast, atmospheric, darkly beautiful, epic track. I really love that one too. So the Nile song, killer, super heavy, man. That song is like super fucking heavy.
That's a Pink
If you
Floyd
listen
cover.
to the one, what's that?
That's a Pink Floyd cover.
Yeah, no, but
Okay.
I mean, if you listen to the original, to what they did with it, they kind of did the same thing like they did with Astronomy Domine. They made it this really super heavy. That might be the heaviest track on the album to my ears. It's just got that fucking like the guitars sound fucking huge on that, and Snake's like visceral on it when he's singing it. It's a cool choice and not an obvious choice of a Pink Floyd song.
Right.
Whereas Astronomy, you may say, well, that's a little more obvious. They're spacey. They're, you know, a weird band. I could see him doing that. The Nile song's like pretty obscure because it's on a soundtrack to a movie that they did called More. It's a terrible movie, by the way. The Lost Machine. That's another super cool proggy one. Again, that's this. Like you guys have already said, this takes a lot of the prog from Nothingface and from Dimension Hatröss and adds it to the more alternate edge sound that was on Angel Rat, and you get this beast. And
well, they named their last live album Lost Machine, didn't they?
yeah, they did actually. You're right. Yeah, and I love Jack Luminous. I got to tell you, when I got this CD and I opened it up and started looking at the liner notes or at the back or whatever it was where the times were, I'm like, man, that's got to be a misprint. There's no way they have a 17-minute song on here. And then I started listening to it. I'm like, holy shit, they got a 17-minute song on here. I mean, that's not something I was expecting Voivod to ever do.
No,
and they really haven't done that ever since. I think The Wake had a pretty long song, like almost 10 minutes or whatever, or 9 minutes, something like that. But never did they ever try, on their proggy albums, Dimension Hatröss and Nothingface, there's nothing really longer than 5.5 minutes, 6 minutes. I think Hatröss has like a 6.5 minute song or something, 7 minutes. So it just was kind of weird. Wrong Way Street is probably my least favorite track. I just don't. That one kind of reminds me a little bit of Twin Dummy, kind of Nothingface Angel Rat vibe. And We're Not Alone's great, man. I love that fucking song. That one's super, super cool. For me, The Outer Limits was, in a weird way, it was kind of watershed moment that should have made this band a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
They should have, if this would have been handled well by the record company, I think it could have put them on the next level, but clearly that wasn't in the cards. It didn't happen. The main reason I say it is because it's accessible like Angel Rat was, but it still has some good riffy stuff in it, and it's not quite as downbeat alterna sounding as Angel Rat was. But yeah, the success and breaking huge just didn't happen on this, and at that point Snake decided to move on, whether it was because of his drug issues or what, I don't know. That I wasn't able to really find out, but it's kind of funny when I review these albums. I listen to them myself, I jot down notes, and I've been pretty subdued on going through all my notes on these because I want, for the sake of this not being a 5-hour episode, but I often will go on Rate Your Music. Do you guys ever use Rate Your Music at all?
I've seen it, yeah.
So I'll go on there and I'll look an album up, and then I'll start popping through the various reviews, and not to steal other people's thoughts, but to say, oh yeah, that's right. I didn't hear that. That's that an obvious thought there. So it kind of helps me kind of crystallize some of the things I'm thinking about the songs. And I saw this was fucking hilarious, I thought, by a dude named Sabbath Bloody Sabbath on there back around 2012. It says, this is one to avoid VOD. Like avoid VOD. Ugh. Wearing flannel in space, anyone? I'm like, what the fuck album was this guy listening to, man? Like, what seriously was he listening to? I don't hear a single grunge chord on this fucking album at all.
No, that would come later.
But I just thought it was fucking funny. I just thought that was funny.
Where would that come
avoid
later?
VOD.
Where would that come later? Let me
Don't,
Yeah,
don't,
here we go.
no,
He
no,
just-
no,
he couldn't-
no. Save it for next week.
He
Save it
couldn't
for
get
next
through
week.
he couldn't get through the episode without saying something
No,
controversial.
save it
Could
for
he?
next week. We have to kick his ass next week. We can't do it at the end of today.
That's true.
So you're
That
saying the
won't-
next two albums sound like grunge albums? Because that is not
Stop.
correct at
No.
all.
Stop.
Not even close. Anyway.
Yeah. So speaking of the grunge albums and the rest of the catalog, we're gonna hit that hopefully next week. I will talk to these guys. We haven't really discussed it as
I'm
yet.
fine with it.
We'll
I
discuss-
can. My schedule's probably
down.
open. Yeah.
I'm down.
And Devin doesn't have anything to do other than jerk off the Pornhub, so I'm sure he's going to be available. Of course, we could all say that, but anyways, but yeah, I mean, we'll try to make that happen next Saturday night. We'll wrap up 8 albums left, I think. Is it 8?
That's 7 or 8. Let's see. 1, 2, 8. Yeah, there's 8.
Yeah.
If you don't count the live albums and EPs at all.
Okay, and then how many EPs? There's Post Society.
There's a couple. There's Post Society, which came out in between
Planet Earth,
Target Earth, and The Wake. And it's really good, but that's where that came out. And then there's a live EP where they played with like a jazz orchestra band for a few sons.
Is that the Morgoth thing? Return to Morgoth?
I don't know what that would.
Yeah.
I'm missing some of the live stuff. I
mean, they've got a few.
I don't have a lot of the live. I don't think I want to get into live. There was one though I was curious about that I do not own. I have to get the 2 E-Force albums. I have to get Infini, which I don't really want to get because I don't really think it's that great, but I should have it. And then I got to get the latest one. I know, it's fantastic. It's awesome.
Really
I got to get it.
It's really good.
Does anyone have the Chronic thing though?
I have it.
I was under the understanding that there are tracks on there that are unreleased before, or different versions or something. Is that true?
There are. There's 3 remixes, 3 unreleased tracks, and then 3 live songs.
Were those unreleased tracks on that tape that I sent you, Matt?
No, and I have a story about all of that, and we'll get into that.
Okay, about that tape though.
We'll get into that next week.
I need to ask a question though. I need to ask a question before we get into it.
Okay.
Is that available somewhere?
No.
Okay. It should be available.
You have to talk to either this guy or that guy.
Okay.
Those are the only 2
I got it.
people
I got it from Jeff, who's close with the band. He's writing a book on them right now.
Yeah, I'd like to know a little bit about
it's
that
all
because
E-Force.
I know
it's all Eric Forrest singing on it.
Yeah, it's a 3rd album that they recorded and then didn't release.
Yes.
And so I'd be interested to find out a little bit more about that, and I guess we can talk about that then more next week.
We can talk about that off camera before the episode, and then for the masses in the next episode. But we shouldn't jump too far ahead. So,
one quick housekeeping, or 2 quick housekeeping pieces here. Number 1, I forgot to mention this at the very outset. I need to thank the incredible Rick Contreras over at the Dreadful Minutes, Dreadful Rick as he's known.
He was here earlier. He left a while ago.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on. He's moving right now, moving house. He's got a lot of shit going on, but he graciously created another awesome thumbnail for me, for everyone.
Very cool.
Really killer. Matt is just, you look so fucking awesome as a tank. It kind of turned me on a little bit, just a little bit. I look fucking loony as fuck, which is true.
I look fat as fuck.
And you turned me on a little bit in that thumbnail. So.
Marty kind of looks like he's about ready to pinch a loaf. I'm just saying. And
normal.
And Devin looks like he's super, super worried. We probably are already hurling insults at him on that art piece because
he was muzzled.
Like
He's muzzled, which is perfect.
Rick muzzled him, which is
perfect. He should be,
correct.
right?
Which is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing to mention then, once this we get part 2 of the Voivod,
the other one we have planned,
stream,
maybe.
We're looking at doing a 2-parter on Enslaved coming up after this one, and that's going to be pretty deep too. That's a lot to digest there. That's Shit, that might even be a 3-parter. That's fucking, a lot of stuff, a lot of material.
That should be a 3-parter, and in my opinion alone, Enslaved, that's a huge discography. 3-parter right there.
A lot going on there. So we'll sort of have to see what's going on there and see what's happening. I got some really big shit coming up here at the end of the week that's gonna be tough. But otherwise, we'll try to reconvene here next Saturday night and do part 2. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And we were up around 32 people, 33 people, which, Matt and Marty brought some of their, we are dealing with international YouTube stars here. So, it's like, it's just how it works, right? But I appreciate you guys being there. We'll hang on a minute. We'll end here. We'll chat real quickly. Thanks everybody that was in here. And Matt, we did it in 2 hours and a half. 2 hours.
That
40,
is
dude.
the perfect time for a stream, man. Come on.
And I talked a lot, but not as much as I usually do. But I was,
it was great. It was totally great. All good.
I hope everybody that tuned in, I hope you all enjoyed this Voivod deep dive, and I hope you all stop by for the next one, because we're going to talk about some equally great albums in part 2. So
and if you don't know Voivod and this was your first time, I mean, that's hard for me to believe, but I'm sure there are people out there that don't. Go listen to some Voivod, man, and use this as a guide to check some shit out. If you had to do a top 3 right here, right on the spot of the albums we just talked about, give me your top 3, Matt.
For just these that we talked about today?
These 3 that we talked about.
Killing Technology, Dimension Hatröss, and The Outer Limits.
Devin.
Outer Limits, Killing Technology, Angel Rat. Yes, I know I'm fucked in the head.
No, you're not. No. Dude, you like
it's
what you like,
good.
and I don't. It's all good, man. Marty,
it's
what you
all
got?
Good. Hatröss, Killing Technology, and Nothingface. In that order.
I'm gonna go Nothingface, Hatröss, Killing Technology. Kind of how I bought them.
We're all pretty close. We're all pretty close. No love for the first 2, even though they're great.
Oh, there's love for sure, but yeah, I mean,
they're good. They just don't crack that. They just don't crack that.
They don't crack the top 3. They're number 4 and 5.
Nah, they're probably a little lower for me, to be honest. But
well, for these 7 albums that we talked about today. Yeah.
Well, I would throw Angel Rat and The Outer Limits in after those first 3 for me, for sure.
Okay.
But I'm more the proggy dude, I'm more the prog rocker guy. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I love my thrash. I love my metal, but those albums are just a little too unrefined for me yet. And as we discussed ad nauseum, and I think Devin really said it. Devin made a great point. The whole stream. He said that Killing Technology is where they really found their sound, and I agree with that for the most part. So, guys, thank you so much. And
Nick has a question. He wants to know if you're going to do a post bullshit.
I hadn't planned on it, Nick. If you want to, I don't know if Rick's around. I'll check. Would you want to host it? Let me know. Hit me up privately and let me know. If you guys want to watch post streaming, maybe we'll do something on Nick's channel or maybe mine or Devin's. I don't know, Devin, if you want to hang around. I know Matt wants to probably bail. So guys, we'll talk in a bit here. I apologize for not hitting the comments. It just was, I didn't really want to lock in on that. So if you have any specific questions, hit me in the comments down there. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And I will say, guys, by the way, I had like 15 subscribers bounce onto my page since you guys made the announcement yesterday or what it was. So
they'll realize you're a joke and they'll leave eventually.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'll do my best to alienate them like that one guy, Blind Inside or whatever. That's what I do best. So, all right, guys, we're gonna end this live stream and hang on, guys.
Peace. See you, everybody.